I'm ready, buddy. So we are back on the Pizza Podcast. Today I'm super excited because we got my girl from Williamsburg, Brooklyn, a true Brooklynite, Allison Fasano. She's an amazing chef. This is a little bit of a different thing from what we normally do, but Allison does have a lot of roots in pizza, and that's how I know her from, reaching out about pizza. That's how we met originally, and I think her profession has so much to lend to what we do when we're talking about ingredients, when we're talking about putting different flavor profiles together. And Allison's worked at everything from Michelin star restaurants. She's been on Chop before. What's going on, Al? Good to have you on.
Hi, Nino. Love to see you, buddy.
Good to see you. What are some of these restaurants that you've worked at that are legendary and amazing?
Legendary. Well, since I was 14, I worked from pizzerias to Michelin star restaurants. I worked as Bobby Flay sous chef for 3 years at his restaurant Gatto in Manhattan. I worked at Del Posto. I worked at the Sagamore Resort for 6 seasons, and then a couple of hidden gems here in Williamsburg. I worked for Carmine Gangone at his pizza place, Carmine's. I've also worked at the place that really started the restaurant scene, Dumont, and their sister restaurant, the Dressler, and a couple other places here and there. I think it's always important to learn and grow from your experiences, So even humble beginnings working at Sette Pani Bakery right on Lamar Street in Williamsburg, making cannolis and scoring bread. I got hired to be a counter girl, but I think you know me. I'm not a counter girl. I'm like a behind the scenes. And also I, don't really always do what I'm told. I like to go off the beaten path. I think we have that in common,
Facts. I gotta give a big shout out to Carmine because Carmine's one of the original neighborhood guys. I mean, he's probably got one of the most successful pizzerias in the neighborhood for sure since he opened that sports bar. It's amazing. So you just said you got your start at Sette Pani. Counter girl in the neighborhood. What'd they do? You said
what's really funny is I went to cook since I was 11 years old after watching the Food Network. I remember going, that's what I wanted to do. I want that to be me. Like, I always knew that food was my path. And, when you're 14, you're able to get those working papers and work. I remember I got my working papers and I was like, let me apply to Sette Pani. And I remember the owner, Nino, was just like, why do you want to work here? I don't think it's very often that a young girl, at the age of 14 shows up to like a, food, like business, like a bakery or something looking for a job, because I don't think that's a common job for a young female. First job to work at a bakery. And I'll never forget, he said to me, why do you want to work here? And I didn't skip a beat, and I said, I love the smell of bread. And I've never forgotten this. I'm 31 now, and I just never forgotten my answer when he asked me that. And actually, it's one of my favorite things. It's something very therapeutic, and I know you do this with pizza. And I don't know if it's the yeast or it's the flour or it's the care that goes into making it that it's so therapeutic. And then for me, bread has it, pizza has it, making pasta has it as well. It's just like the care that goes into it, the history that goes into something, just the smell of it making, whether it's, bread in the oven, you're watching the yeast and it's proofing or whatever it is, it's just so therapeutic and so homey for me. Just like you break open, a baguette and you smell it. It's just like, I do love the smell of bread. I don't know, for you, it's pizza.
Oh no, I love the smell of bread too. I'm fucking obsessed with bread, especially lately. And especially since I've figured out that there's this, the glycemic index thing and more about the science. I am completely obsessed. Couple episodes ago, we did with Francisco from Modernist Cuisine, who just wrote Modernist Bread and is now coming out with Modernist Pizza. So, I mean, that definitely brought me, to bigger levels in not only my craft, but since I started Williamsburg Pizza, back in the day, I hit a ceiling where I was like, wait, why am I looking at pizza makers? I got to start looking at bread makers after probably 10 years of making pizza. And it was, that was, Chad Roberts' Tartine Bread, reading that book was the moment that kind of changed my trajectory and my level in the industry. I always attribute that to making, winning some of the competitions I won and getting to the level that I did, kind of ahead of the pack. Like now everybody knows. Now, back then there wasn't any pizza books out there, but going back to, so you grew up, your family's Italian, obviously, no?
Yeah, so my dad was fully Italian. My mom's Irish and Russian.
Oh, okay.
That's why I have blonde hair and blue eyes.
There you go.
And then you have my sister. She's all like, she has dark hair and dark eyes. And my father was very like, he will go outside and comes back in like really dark, like Napolitan style skin. And I go outside and I burn to death, But there's no doubt, like my last name is actually a town in Puglia. I have not gotten a chance to visit yet, but it's definitely on my list. But also I think I think this, people in Naples and actually in Puglia have blue eyes.
True.
So, a lot of times people hear Fasano.
Even in certain places in Sicily, because they have Norman roots and there was a lot of Greek things and, I always compare Sicily to Mexico and the fact that, people from New York, most of the guys from Mexico that immigrate to New York are from Puebla, which is way down south, which has, a certain look, this and that.
They look like me, basically.
Not in Puebla. In North Mexico, there's parts that they look like you. Because, it's just like, you got to look at the world, people are, they're from where they're from. There's conquerors, there's whatever. And, that's going to depend. In Sicily, for instance, like you have towns that they were the bases 500 years ago for the Norman invasions. Like that's how they conquered a place. So like in that town, like it kind of never changed. And it's the same thing in Mexico.
And I also think the greatest way to see, or like history, if you will, is go down to like a market, like one of those outdoor like marketinos like they have in Italy. Because like if you're in, let's say, Calabria, Naples, if you're in Rome and you go to a market, but if you go to Sicily and go to one of their marketinos outside, you see like the difference in food. Because we all know the history of Sicily, of how many people conquered Sicily, how many people were in and out of Sicily. Very big thing in Sicily is they have mixed fruits and nuts. It's in like a combination because, they were taken over by, Greece and even Africa as well. You see this influence. And I think you could always see it through the food, because things that you see at a marketino in Sicily aren't the same things, about an hour away in Calabria.
100%. Yeah. You see things like couscous and like fish dishes. You see, there's so many things in Sicily that like kind of don't really exist as like modern things in the rest of Italy, whether it's like right across the water in Calabria.
Yeah, and I think one of my favorite like cannolis, for instance, we all know they originate in Sicily, but a lot of people don't realize there's like a Sicilian cannoli because the shell itself is a lot darker because it contains marsala wine and cocoa powder. And actually, even the cream inside the cannoli, it's lighter. It's more citrus forward. It's something a lot different than other regions of Italy, even here in America. People love cannolis, and I came back from Italy, and I was just like, wait a minute, this is not like a cannoli I had in Sicily. So there's a big difference.
So I'm interested because what you just said, you said citrus forward.
Yes.
So that would be like, you're adding like, maybe it's from the peel, you're adding these bitter notes, these acidic notes, like how would a person like you who's so in depth in the in the chef scene, how would you attribute that to flavor? Because I know like your background, you're looking at these flavors probably in a much deeper way than a lot of pizzaiolos are looking at things. So
yeah, I remember like having a cannoli in Sicily, and I always love to try the food like a place is known for. You know what I'm saying? Like if a place is known for this, it's like we have to eat this here. Like to see where it comes from and the history. And like other people like go to New York and see Times Square, where I'm like, what is this town known for? Let's eat that. Like I like to basically eat my way through a town, if you will. So I remember going to Sicily and having these cannolis, and like it wasn't nothing that I know of a cannoli. You know, I remember taking a bite of it, and even the cream inside was a lot lighter, wasn't as heavy. You know, I always like think of food that sticks to your roof of your mouth. Like, you know, when you eat peanut butter and it sticks to the roof of your mouth?
Sure.
I feel like a lot of times cannolis or even cheesecakes have this, like the thing where it sticks to the roof of your mouth. And I just remember it being very, like, it's smooth taste, and it was creamy, and it was this orange, like almost like candied orange with inside like the ricotta filling that we all know. And it was like light notes of chocolate chips. And I remember going, I've never had a cannoli like this in New York. And you just see the shells a lot darker. The Marsala wine, which is a fortified Sicilian wine. And I'm like, of course that would be in the shell. Like, why would I know that? And you go here, you learn about the cannoli, you taste it, you see it, you learn this history. And I think this changes the way you think about food or what you know. And even like growing up and living in New York, how many things, and I'm sure you know this, like even with like pizza, is how things almost get changed. Like, it's not only for good or bad, it's just like, sometimes we lose the history. Yeah, sometimes I think we lose the history of something, like what everybody here thinks if they know of cannoli, and you go to Sicily, it's just like blows your mind.
Right. Well, I mean, when you're creating a dish, like when you're looking at things, are you looking at like, okay, fat, salt, bitter, sweet, salty, like all those different flavors? I feel like, I mean, my chef friends are always chasing that, and it seems like what you're describing is, you know, maybe those bitter notes and those sweet notes and those acidic notes are like missing from like just sugar and ricotta, which is what most cannoli cream is made from. Yeah. You know what I mean? And like that's really what's making it special in Sicily. You went to school in Italy to learn how to cook when you were, how old were you?
I think I'd be about like 18 or maybe I was like 19 or 20, because I originally started at Johnson & Wales in Rhode Island, and I was just like, I just want to do Italian cuisine, so why not go to a place where it started from? So I went to school actually in Calabria, which is the southernmost part of Italy.
And what school was that?
It was the Italian Culinary Institute, and we studied regional Italian cuisine. So, you know, there's 20 regions of Italy, and each region has its own story to tell and all dishes that it's known for. And it's about learning, especially in Italy, where, you know, kind of food and history go hand in hand, whether you're learning about how olive oil is made, or, you know, you're learning about, you know, cannolis from Sicily, or we're learning about ribollita, you know, which is a, you know, soup which comes from Tuscany, or, you know, it's about learning to cuisine and what grows wild and how these people cook from, you know, the land. And each region you'll learn about it, whether you're in the north and there's like heavy ragouts, or you're in the south and, you know, you have like cuttlefish and citrus is growing wild. And so it's basically like seeing what comes from every region and what grows wild and what they're known for. It's just like really exciting to see the history and how things are made, and kind of like learn from almost like these nonas, if you will, and these chef instructors and like a gelato master. And it was just, you know, to like learn and be in a place where it comes from. I don't think anything really gets better than that, and getting a better understanding and a grip on really what the Italian cuisine is, you know, especially like being in New York, you know, it changes your perspective, because how many people think chicken parmesan is Italian, or baked ziti and all these parm dishes and penne alla vodka, and then you're like, none of that is actually Italian. It's Italian American.
So it's Italian, but it's from the diaspora. Right?
Yeah.
You had the first and the second diaspora. So, you know, you got like these people, they're coming over to America, they're coming to Argentina, they're coming to everywhere they're coming from. But in America, they're coming over and it's like, oh, wow, we've never had meat before.
Yeah.
So we're going to use meat. You know what I mean? We have our cheeses and we have all these things. You know, in my personal take on it is that, like, yeah, it evolved off of that, because you're talking about a time like 1880 to 1920, you got the first Italian diaspora. And, you know, these guys are coming over, and they're coming over because they're in abject poverty. There's no, they're basically starving to death. They're malnourished. Like, how many people even from the second diaspora, like, how many people like, growing up, like, I know a ton, where their grandparents, they're 5 feet tall, and their children and their grandkids are, like, monsters, and they're 6'3", and it's literally because of malnutrition that they were exposed to as kids. So I think, like, Italians came over here and they were just like, oh, we have chicken and we have steak and we have all these things. We just had Lou Creasy from Creasy's in Williamsburg. Remember Creasy's?
Of course. Who doesn't remember Creasy's? I mean, don't ask any questions. You didn't see anything. You don't know anybody. That's the rules about going to fucking Creasy's. That was old. That's like old school Williamsburg knows Creasy's, you know? Like,
but he would say, like, everybody wanted to eat steak.
Yeah.
Like, we had pasta, we had all these things, but all these guys wanted to eat steak. And I think it's like this insane window into the mentality of the people that came over here that's kind of misunderstood and kind of misrepresented today, where it's just like, we're like, okay, spaghetti and meatballs is an authentic Italian. I just saw an episode of Pasta Grannies where there was a woman somewhere making spaghetti and meatballs. And even if it wasn't, and it created here by Italian immigrants back in the day, isn't that I almost feel like it's a window into the past. Kind of how it was. But you grew up like Italian American, like, what was it like growing up in Williamsburg when, like, you were a kid? Like, did you go to the Julio Feast?
Of course.
Did you have, like, all these places around? Like, can you, like, I'm not from Williamsburg originally. Like, I kind of, like, got adopted by Williamsburg in an older age.
We accepted you with open arms. Like, you fit in.
Even though I was Sicilian.
Yeah, you fit in. Don't worry. Well, Nino, you fit in. Like, with open arms, we accepted you. Because I feel like you could fit in Williamsburg. Like, there's not a doubt. I'd be like, this guy's a Brooklyn guy.
Yeah, sure.
You know, no one's asking any questions about you, you know?
I mean, they were asking questions. They were like, "Oh, to
Siciliano." You went to like juniors or something? Is that do you went to like juniors or something?
So I think or
was it you asking the questions?
Well, I was definitely asking questions.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, when I moved to Williamsburg, I opened Williamsburg Pizza. I never thought it'd be in Williamsburg in my life. Like, even though I grew up, like, because I grew up half between New Jersey when I was younger and, like, Brooklyn when I was a little bit older. I didn't know Williamsburg was an Italian neighborhood. Like, nobody in my neighborhood really knew that because we didn't leave our neighborhoods back then.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty accurate. I think I grew up on Ainsley between Union and Lomer Street, and I lived there my whole life. Both of my parents grew up on Devou Street, right across the street from each other, and my grandfather grew up in Brooklyn, Williamsburg, and it's really like back in the day, no one left Williamsburg. Like, you didn't really go to the South Side. You didn't go to Bedford Avenue. My father used to say, if you go to Bedford Avenue, they'll start throwing bottles at you.
Right.
And when I got like my driver's license, my permit, my father taught me how to drive on Bedford Avenue because there was no cars on it. So that basically paints a picture in your head. Remember we would go driving on Bedford Avenue and you'll see like tumbleweeds. I think there was like a Polish restaurant and that was about it. But
when you went up north on Bedford Avenue, though, not on the south side, like
no, definitely not on the south side, definitely on the north side. But growing in Williamsburg, we had like neighborhood spots, like Creasy's was definitely one of them. Like
Juniors, Fortunatos.
Yeah, you had what's it called?
Bamontes.
Bamontes, has been there for 100 years. Like
I love them so much.
Lisa Bamontes.
Lisa and her sisters there.
Old school. And, growing up in Williamsburg, we had like stapled restaurants. It was pizzerias, Piedalugas, like that's what the staple was. Like, we didn't have other things. It wasn't a food scene. It wasn't like a destination to go to Williamsburg. Growing up, my mom used to say, if anyone says, where are you from? Just say Brooklyn. Don't say Williamsburg. So, there was that weird thing about Williamsburg. And then...
Giuseppe from Ornella Vitrelli? I'm not sure if you know him or not. He's from the neighborhood and everything, but he has a restaurant. He was on the podcast as well, and he was saying the same exact thing. Yeah. He was like, you didn't tell people you were from Williamsburg.
Yes, nobody has ever heard of it.
Right. And it was like, it was almost like an embarrassing thing. Like, it's like...
It was like, my mom used to say, if anybody says, where are you from? Don't say Williamsburg, just say Brooklyn. And it was very like big, small town, Williamsburg, which a lot of people don't understand. Like no one left the neighborhood. Like people got older. They lived in the same house as their parents. My grandparents lived upstairs from us. You worked in your neighborhood. Like we didn't really go, like everybody knew everybody. Like, my grandma worked at Small World Daycare Center 2 blocks away from our house. She worked there for like 35 years, and everyone used to say, oh, your grandma's Miss Gale, and I was like, yeah. Meanwhile, these kids are like 35 years old. They're like, oh, Miss Gale, like, like that's how it was, and like I went to PS 132 in the neighborhood, and like my fourth grade teacher went to school with my uncle, and like everybody spoke like me. So we all have these accents, which you said. But it's also like, because our teachers also spoke like us too. So we didn't know any difference until we like went on vacation or something to like Florida. And people like, what the hell are you guys from? But Williamsburg was like really big, small town. Everybody knew everybody. Everybody knew everybody's business. We were in school with, our classmates for years. And then I would say around 1999 to like 2000, 2001 is kind of
started to change.
Williamsburg started to become what it is today. And something I always remember, and I think you do too, is a restaurant opened up on Union Avenue called Dumont. Do you remember?
I don't remember when it opened up because I wasn't there. I was in the city then. But, I mean, I could only imagine. I know what Williamsburg was. I know that I got a job at Baci Abbracci when I was, I want to say like 21 years old. And when I looked it up on the American OG for that job, I was like, wait, where are you? And it was this guy from Naples. I think they used to work at like 11 Madison. They were like FOH at like some fancy place. The guys that opened it from Naples, definitely from Italy. I don't know, from Naples. But I was like, wait, where are you? And they're like, Williamsburg. And I'm like, what? Like, and they're like, yeah, no, it's good. Like, come down. And I came with a loaded gun. Because I was like...
We had a bad rap back in the day, Williamsburg.
Yeah. And now I know Williamsburg a lot more intimately and the history and this and that. And, like, that probably wasn't necessary. But from what I was told growing up and, like, where I grew up at Gravesend, like, in my later teen years... you didn't go to Williamsburg. Like, you get robbed, you get shot, yada, yada, yada.
Bad rap
and they were, you know where Baci Abbracci is.
Yes,
like,
I do.
So then when I got off the train and I had no idea the changes that had been made, I was like my heart stopped.
Yeah.
And I was just like, holy shit, I'm about to go to jail for 5 years for having a loaded weapon on me. And, it was... I mean, and then I didn't even get to know, even during that time, I didn't even get to know the Williamsburg that is really Italian until very, a few years later in my life. Like, it wasn't until after I opened Williamsburg Pizza that I actually got all that. I haven't thought about what I just said in years and years and years. I almost forgot about that. Yeah. You know what I mean? But that was...
But I actually think restaurants could change a neighborhood because I think, like, when I think back to Dumont, I think when Dumont opened, I think maybe it opened in 1999, maybe 2000. You have to remember at this time, I'm probably about 9, 10, maybe I'm 11 years old. And I remember we had a place, what was the name of it right now? We had like a couple of local places, and
was that Aurora place over by the Bedford?
Oh yeah,
yeah.
But I just remember because I lived around the corner from Dumont, and I've never in my life seen people wait an hour for brunch. Like, that was unheard of. Like, you go see Carmine, you just go sit, have a table. Maybe there's a few minute wait here or there. but there was nobody waiting, especially like seeing people like you knew they weren't from the neighborhood. You know, like waiting an hour, and, you know, Dumont was busy like all the time. And I, you know, went to go eat there. And I remember, this is not food that we're used to having. You know, this isn't a pizzeria. You know, it was like very like upscale, almost like bistro-like. You could see some French influences, Italian. They were making everything from scratch. And, you know, this, even when I was like young going there to eat, you know, I wouldn't say I have an advanced palate at that age, but I just remember going, this food's delicious. This is the best food I've ever had. And I think other people saw what easy commute it was to go to Manhattan, because literally 2 stops you're in Manhattan, you know, from Williamsburg. And I think people started seeing that, and they saw, I think your reputation of Brooklyn kind of goes away when you walk the streets of Williamsburg. Like if you're on Devou or you're on Ainsley or you're walking on Lama Street, and you see and you could feel this neighborhood vibe. You know, it's very neighborhood. It's very like families all live in a house. It's not like you have 8 tenants. It's like, no, like that floor, you know, it's like our grandparents lived upstairs, and that was like the homes in Williamsburg. You know, your grandparents lived upstairs from you, or your grandparents owned your house. And, you know, that's how we grew up. And you feel like this neighborhood vibe. You see these houses and you walk down these streets, and it's something that could be seen, heard, felt. It's a lot of like emotions, and you see this when you walk in Williamsburg, because we all think like, Brooklyn, like you go to Williamsburg and walk the streets, it kind of changes your vibe, like what people think.
I mean, DeVoe's a fucking big block that changes your mind with all the Italian flags, even to this day.
Absolutely. And I think like, you know, growing up, we had a pool in my backyard, and I remember people going, "Oh my God, you have a pool?" Like,
yeah, no one. The guys that have pools today, you bring new people to that, they can't even wrap their heads around. I know, it's like their brains explode.
Yeah, like people were surprised that we had a yard and, you know, I have a pool, and they're like, you have this? And I'm like, yeah. It's like, where do you think we live? And I think this vision, whether it's from TV shows or movies, you know, then you go to like, especially it's not even just Williamsburg, in other areas of Brooklyn, because it's so like has this old and history story to it. It's like it changes. Like, go there, see it, experience it. Like,
well, you have to experience it for the people that have been there for generations. I mean, one of the major things is now that people live there. You know, imagine a kid moving in today. They're gonna have to live with 5 people, and they're still gonna be paying $800 to $1,200 a month in rent, and they're not gonna have a pool and this and that. It's hard for them to wrap their head around, because they're from, you know, they're not. Like that's not there for them to look at.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
It's, a lot of it's
so
gone,
like I understand that, but when they see that, they're like, wait a minute, there's pools in Brooklyn? Like, I've lived in Brooklyn for 5 years.
Like the other day, I think you called me. You were by Union Pool, which is a bar now, but years ago it was actually a pool supply company, and we used to walk around the corner, and like my father would go buy
get
like
your chlorine.
Yeah. You know, so a lot of people are like, oh, that's a weird name for a bar. I'm like, literally, it used to be a pool supply store. Like, literally.
Well, most people don't even think, most people, like, that go to Union Pool think it was a pool.
Yeah.
Like a community pool. It's like none of these people had pools. So they would go there to go to the pool. And then the reality was it so many people had pools at that point in history that it was a pool supply.
It was a pool supply store. And I think, you know, now if somebody moved to Williamsburg and see like great restaurants, and there's a lot of Michelin star restaurants, and there's a lot of beautiful big condos, and a lot of these old houses were knocked down. So has it lost the field? Yes, but I don't think it ever will. You know, I think the history still lives on. I think with anything, like, things change, but also you could still see the old and the history. It's always there. You know, talk to neighborhood people. I'll take you on a tour if you want, you know, like.
Listen, Allison, I'll take you on a fucking tour.
All right. We'll both have different tours. Yeah. You know, like, I remember there was a movie years ago. Do you remember Donnie Brasco? Do you remember?
Yeah, of course.
You know, my mom watches that movie. My mom's like, oh, I know Sonny Black's son. Like, my mom will watch the movie. She knows everybody. But
yeah, I know him too. Yeah, he hangs out
you know what I'm saying? You're right. He does. Yeah. You know, but it's so funny.
He used to deliver pizza for me when he got out for like a couple. Well, it wasn't a couple years. It was like a couple weeks. But,
you talk
Mary
to
is a good
Sonny.
guy. He takes care of him.
Yeah, you'll see, talk to Sonny. But also, what a lot of people don't know is over on Metropolitan, that club they used to hang out with is a restaurant now. And then you have neighborhood people going, they used to chop up bodies in the basement.
Motion City Lounge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But also you have people like us, know what happened there. Like, we're not going to go eat there.
I'm not going to go eat there. There's fucking demons in that food.
Yeah, that's right.
You know?
But it's just that's a Williamsburg history. I remember sitting at a restaurant in Williamsburg a couple of years ago when this guy would I don't know if he was from the Midwest or the South or somewhere other than Brooklyn. He was giving a tour. Have you seen these people giving a tour of Williamsburg?
I have not.
But I know I had it. And I remember
I feel like if I did, I would run up to them and be like, what are you doing over
I know.
here?
I was mid-eating, mid-food, getting the fork to my mouth. But I just remember, I turned around and I was just like, if anyone's giving a tour, I hope it's me. If I'm getting led through a tour with a guy from a Southern accent
Somebody from
Texas,
the neighborhood better be getting a kickback. Was it like a mob tour? Or what was
it wasn't. The guy is I can't really do a Southern accent, but the guy's like, these are great buildings over here. And I'm just like, no. Yeah. No, he can't give a tour of Williamsburg, the history. What did he, go on Wikipedia and look up the history of Williamsburg? No way, man. No way, man. I mean, you need neighborhood people, a velour suit.
I mean, your mother, somebody. I don't care who
else,
the fuck
my mother,
it is.
anybody.
Somebody
smoking a cigarette on the corner with an espresso.
Yeah, and if some Southern guy's gonna give this thing, it should be
It was real. I was actually waiting to eat at St. Anselm. Metropolitan. I was waiting to eat there, and the guy had a little flag, and he was talking about the neighborhood. I remember, I was just like, oh no, and I seen it multiple times before. I was eating at the Commodore, and I was just like, what? Who's giving these tours? Who set this up? Who's making money from it? I need to speak to somebody. Well,
you could get
on behalf.
I know we gotta ask Scott Wiener about this, but you could get a a certification to do tours in New York City.
Oh, yeah.
Wherever you want. I know it's messed up, but
yeah, I need something legit. Right now, I need a legit tour guy. I need to know he's official.
That's what we need.
The person gave me a tour in Williamsburg. If he doesn't have a velour suit with dark sunglasses, if he doesn't have a driver, somebody holding his umbrella, he better be smoking a cigar or something. Taking us.
Add a little authenticity to it.
A little something. Even if he has slick back hair, his name is Mario or something along those lines. Tell me something. Be oh, is your mother Debbie? Yeah, I went to school with her. Oh, this is official.
Yeah.
Something along those lines.
We went to Bamonti's. We went to
Bamonti's.
Oh, I'll tell you about when Fortunato's open.
Yes, exactly.
It was this crazy
I need something. If I say to him, where are you from? And he's Montana. I'm oh, forget it.
Yeah.
Give him refund. Automatic.
Listen, I 100% agree. There should be a neighborhood society. Monsignor Jamie should set this up where it's you got to get certified, and we'll give you the Nonas.
Yeah, there's a test.
And you'll kick back.
Yeah, there's a test
you got to pass.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And they get kicked in. No, you're 100% right. All right, we're gonna take it.
Where did you do your communion from, or something San Francisco, Mount Carmel? What high school you went to? Did you go to PS 132? It needs to have some sort of what was your first job?
Your high school in Williamsburg?
Well, actually, I went to Grover Cleveland in Ridgewood.
Oh, you came all the way up to where we are now.
Yeah, but it was just a few stops on a bus. But it's also a lot of other kids went there.
See, it's funny you say that because I got friends from Marine Park that went over by me in Gravesend. And I got friends from Gravesend that went over by me in Marine Park. And I was I always wondered about that. I was yeah, how the fuck do you get trucked?
Yeah, we get shipped out.
I mean, it's literally a fucking 40-minute drive, and there's fucking 3 schools within a couple miles of you. Within less than a mile of you.
It was an easy commute. It's all right.
Yeah, James Madison, Lafayette. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This guy's it's weird. All right, we got to take a real quick break for our sponsors, and we'll be right back. All right, so we're back. You know what? What's something that I think that most people don't understand? That I understand, but it's like a hard thing for everybody. And, you know, I grew up in an old school Italian family, you know, yada, yada, yada. And I wasn't really into it until I was older. You know what I mean? Like, I remember coming to Williamsburg and, like, I couldn't tell you what Santa Rosalie even really stands for, except for it was, like, the party that we had in our community. But when I came to Williamsburg and I got invited to cook at the Julio Feast and I saw what was going on, and I just dived into that history because it was just a different time in my life. Like when I was 14 years old, I was like, you know, everything was normal to me. You know what I'm saying? Now I have like a better aspect where everything's like a little bit, you know, more special, and I want to do those traditions. And I got to imagine it was somewhat of the same for you, or like, I mean, did you go to the Julio Feast when you were a kid?
Of course, we went every year, and I think, you know, it goes on for like over a week or so. And
11 days.
Yeah, 11 days to be exact. But of course, we went several days, you know, as a kid. You know, you go get some Zeppelis and you go get a sausage and pepper sandwich, and you know, met up with the kids in your neighborhood, because like everybody knew everybody then. And it's also like a time where it's kind of like, you know, you'll run into somebody, even if they left the neighborhood. Maybe they live in a different state. Maybe they live in Long Island. You know, maybe they live in Florida. It's kind of like that one time of year where it's like an invitation for people to come back to the neighborhood, because you know you're going to know everybody. Like, even like, you know, I would go to the feast with like my mother or my grandmother, and they'll, you know, run into somebody like their friend that they knew, you know, growing up, who were like, oh, I came back in for this. Like, it's like that one thing that everyone comes into the neighborhood back for, you know, like seeing your old friends. Like, it's kind of like the ultimate reunion. Like,
right.
Especially as somebody who grew up there, you know, I walked there from my house, was only a couple blocks away. You know, I met up with my friends, we would hang out, you know, you play a couple of games or whatever you know, you're doing. And it's like, we'll see people that left the neighborhood years ago. It's like,
yeah, it could be they've been gone for 10 years. They could have went to New Jersey or Long Island, and then they're back.
Yeah, and then, you know, you'll see all your old friends there, and it's kind of like, you know, that's our thing. Like, you know, that's like the meeting, you know, the meeting place, if you will. And I mean, it's kind of like what they say, it's your neighborhood. You always go back, right?
No, 100%. I just, like, last week, there's some, I think it's a Ken Burns produced, or he's got something to do with it, but there's this PBS series called The Italian Americans. Yeah. And there was a story in there from this town in, you know, the middle of nowhere in Pennsylvania that was an old school Italian town. And they have, like, I think it's called, like, the Big Time or whatever the fuck they call it, but it's, like, the same thing. The difference is, you know, everybody knows San Gennaro, you know, like guys come from all over from San Gennaro, around the country and this and that. And that's a big Italian feast. But when I saw the Julio Feast for the first time, I was like, and that's why I dove so much into the history, because I was older. I was, I think, 28 the first time I saw it in my life. And I was like, how the fuck didn't I know this? Like, let me explain this to all you guys real quick. The Julio Feast is, it's a feast of San Paolino. And where it comes from the town of Nola. And it's been going on, I believe, since like 1483 in Nola is where it traces its roots back to, which is, I mean, over 1,500 years. It's the oldest feast, not only in American history, like Italian-American history, but probably in Italian history. I don't know that for a fact, but 83, whatever. Like, this is a time when like priests could still get married. Where it comes from, Giulio means like it's the flowers, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the story goes, there's like a lot of legends, and you guys can look this up on Wikipedia, but it's there was a town called Nola, and the bishop of the town was San Paolino. And what he did was, a bunch of raiders came in and they stole all the children and a bunch of other people and took them into slaves. And the story that they tell is that the Turk, who was probably like a Sand Turk or whatever he was back then, because the Ottoman Empire and like Islam didn't exist in 1483, heard the bishop's story. The bishop who got taken prisoner was like, listen, if you let the children go, I'll offer myself as a slave. And when that story, they said like F you to the guy. And when that story got back to this Turk, like a guy who lived in Turkey back then, which back then I think was the Byzantine Empire, but it might be talking about a different thing. Like we're still doing research on this. But he came and rescued all the children and the bishop. And when they came back on the boat to Nola, they were all holding up these flowers. And the Julio, which today in Nola and in Williamsburg, which has been going on for like 120 years plus, the big thing, the Julio that they lift up is a representation of those flowers. And every year that they did the feast, they made it bigger and bigger to make it more important year after year. And you know, the guys that lift this thing, the lifters, literally get physical deformities from doing it. They have these big bumps on their shoulder. And it's one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen. In NOLA, like if you go to NOLA like next year when they do this thing, there's like 10 of them that they do. And they're walking through these little streets and blah, 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 blah. And I mean, I still cannot understand. I mean, I think it's a marketing thing. I think we should market it more because it's such a beautiful thing. And like these guys, they're so committed and blah, blah, blah. And it really, you know, people don't think it's Williamsburg is this Italian neighborhood, right?
Yeah. You know, it's, you know, you have all these different areas of Williamsburg, right? You know, like when a lot of people think of Williamsburg, you know, there's a lot of Hasidic, you know, like the Jewish community.
In the South Side.
Yes.
You have Puerto Ricans and Dominicans, like, you know.
Yes. And then, like, if you walk through, like, you know, Ainsley, Devou, Lawmer, or Graham Avenue, you know, we used to say, like, Graham Avenue, like, you could tell somebody's from the neighborhood when they say I was on the avenue. Like, it's Graham Avenue.
It's Graham Avenue. Right.
Yeah, Graham. So, like, my grandma would go, like, walk from our house to the avenue, which is, like, 4 to 5 blocks, right? 4 hours later, my grandma would show up home, and, like, she went to, like, Seatown, you know what I'm saying? And I'm like, what took you so long? Well, I saw so-and-so, and she was telling me about her daughter, and this, that, the other thing, and guess who else I saw, and this, that, the other thing. It's like a project and a half, you know,
Right.
for her to walk to the avenue, because she saw everybody and their mothers that she knows, you know, because that's what it was about. You know, everybody knows everybody. You know, you're stopping, you're bullshitting, talking to people. Or another Williamsburg thing, I think it's a Brooklyn thing. Like, I'll say, hey, how you doing? And you'll respond with, hey, how you doing? Like, no one actually answers the question.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I'll be like, hey, Nino, how you doing? And you'll be like, hey, how you doing?
Hey, how
like,
you doing?
Like, but no one answers
Like, doing good. How are you?
No one answers the question. That's
Right.
like a thing. So now, like,
Doing good. How are you?
yeah, nobody says that. Like, I'd be like, hey, how you doing? And the other person will say, hey, how you doing? Like, there's no, I'm doing good. How are you?
Yeah, when you
This,
pass
that,
it by
the
on the
thing.
street,
No,
100%.
absolutely not. You know, but that's how it is. Or we'll say words like bullshitting. Like, that means I was just talking to somebody.
Yeah.
My mom was like, oh, I saw so-and-so. We started bullshitting. Like, nobody else says that, though.
I never even thought of that. Yeah, you're right.
You know, because
Nobody
no one ever
really says that.
My mom was like, oh, I saw so-and-so, and then we started bullshitting. Like, who says that? Like, you think about it now, like,
I think about it as you're fucking telling me, and
Bullshitting.
you know, yeah. What were you doing? Oh, I was bullshitting.
yeah, like, it sounds so bizarre.
What, you're like,
It's like
you're in bed, you're like fucking
Bullshitting.
jerking off. Like, what the
Yeah.
fuck are you doing? Like,
or, you know, another, like, thing that's, like, old school people do it. My grandma used to get, like, folding chairs, and she'll sit outside on the stoop.
oh yeah, we did that in my
People
old neighborhood.
watching.
Yeah,
I think that's, like, people watching, but you'll see people that you know.
it's like that Deep Martin song, standing on the corner, watching all
Yes.
the girls go by.
Yeah.
No, I mean that.
My
that
grandfather used to sit in front of the house for hours. Like, we had like a stoop going down. You know, he used to prop his like folding chair on the top of the stoop and just like sit there for hours.
So I actually, years ago, went to San Francisco and a few other places when I was traveling around and brought that to communities where I would go to the hardware store, pick up a bunch of folding chairs, pick up like a Bluetooth speaker, because, you know, back in the day, it was like a different apparatus. It was like a boom box like that.
Yeah.
And then I would be like, yo, we're the lawn chair mafia over here. I'm going to teach you how to do this. And this is, you know, when you're hanging out, instead of just going to the bar, you and your friends, you guys get lawn chairs. You hook up the Bluetooth thing. You play some good music, and you sit outside and you
bullshit.
You bullshit.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You know, and that's a great way to meet people. And it's like, you don't really see that in many neighborhoods, but like, it's like, even now you walk the streets of Williamsburg, people still do it. Like the older community does it. I think it gives them a reason to go outside their house. You'll see their friends pass, whatever. Sometimes people go, you know, they'll live across the street or down the block and they'll grab their folding chairs and they'll sit in front of your house. Mm-hmm. You know, I'd be like, Grandma, where did you go? She was like, oh, sitting in front of So-So's house, you know?
Yeah,
like,
you're just talking. You're shooting
just
the
talking.
shit. You're
Every once in a while,
socializing.
somebody will, you know, bring down coffee or, you know, you have like, you know, something from the bakery or somebody's got donuts or cake, and it's a good day, you know, in the neighborhood.
So you said your mother's from, what did you say, Rush?
Actually, my mom's Irish and Russian. Her maiden last name is Duffy, so very Irish.
Did she cook like Italian cuisine though, or not?
So I hope my mother doesn't watch this. So my mother actually cooked nothing.
Okay.
Real story. She'll tell you she did, but she really didn't. So growing up, she didn't really cook anything. And we lived in the traditional home, like I spoke about. Like my grandparents were her parents lived upstairs from us. Like my father's parents passed away before I was born. So they used to do a lot of cooking. My mom cooked nothing. My dad used to cook a lot. He used to cook a lot of Italian. But before I was born, my father was actually a baker. He worked retired from the MTA. But growing up, we used to like bake a lot, whether it's cookies, cakes, you know, whatever. We used to just like bake a lot.
Pastry baker.
Yeah,
Did
so
you
my
do
father
bread
was
too?
Yeah, my father was a baker, and growing up we used to like bake and cook stuff, and we used to cook a lot on the grill, and you know, he had a lot of traditional Italian cuisine, like his, you know, parents and grandparents, you know, brought down to him. So it's definitely like, you know, I get a taste of different cultures, you know. So my mother's mother was Russian Jewish. Mm-hmm. So like, you know, I think it's really important to see different styles of cooking and cuisines, you know, especially like even the Jewish cuisine, which a lot of people think of. They
kind of write it off.
Yeah, it's
as
not
bland as, you know, whatever.
But if you get to the history of like Jewish cuisine, and I think there are a lot of, you know, well-known chefs out there that really, you know, paint a picture and put it on Main Street, especially now. You know, so, you know, people think of Jewish cuisine as gefilte fish and matzahs, but there's actually so much more to that. So I think it's important to see the history and the culture and the food. And, you know, like my grandfather was Irish, you know, you think of corned beef and cabbage, just that the other thing, and you hear, you know, especially food and history go hand in hand, and you could taste it and who, you know, took over a town, and, you know, but I definitely really always felt more towards the Italian side.
Did you ever get to go over to like your neighbors' houses and like
my neighbors were Italian.
Yeah, that's
Both
what I'm saying.
Both ends.
I mean, when you were a kid, were you like, I mean, you were going over their houses,
of
they were
course.
left like east, west, north, and south, that you had to be like surrounded.
Yeah, and then I remember the, you know, the Nona next door, she used to like garden, and every year, you know, she'll make her own tomato sauce, and it's like one of those things where you could smell. Like I think in Williamsburg now you could smell, you know, the cooking from the streets, you know, and that was Williamsburg. And I remember just sitting in my backyard, and you could smell the basil, and you could smell the tomatoes, and you could smell the garlic. And, you know, her grandkids were my age, who used to hang out all the time. And, you know, they were Italian, and we'd go over there, whether you're having lunch or dinner or snack. And, you know, you see, you know, like their grandma was like off the boat. I think actually she was still on the boat, but
right.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I don't think till this day, I don't think the grandma speaks English till this day. Which is fine.
a lot of the families that I meet from Williamsburg, a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them are from the second diaspora, which was after World War II and like mainly in the 1950s and 60s, which we had in, you know, in Gravesend and Bensonhurst as well. Like there's still like I don't think as much as Williamsburg. I always tell people, I'm like, Williamsburg is the strongest Italian American community in New York City, in my opinion, today. And, that opinion is based on me growing up, where when I talked to older guys, it was like kind of Williamsburg was like this afterthought. You know what I mean? It's like, there's some guys over here, but you got Bensonhurst, Dyker, you got all these neighborhoods right next to each other, like, that are all full, and they're all empty now.
But I also think with anything, you have to go somewhere and experience it.
Right.
Like with Williamsburg, I grew up there. I was born and raised. I went to school there. And then I experienced firsthand the change. Like another restaurant I think old school people remember besides Creashy's was a place called Milo's. Now, Milo's was on Lawmer Street, which now I actually couldn't even tell you what the name of the bar. It's a bar now.
Okay.
It's kind of like diagonal from the bagel store. It was a place called
on Metropolitan.
On Lawmer Street.
On Lawmer and Metro? Like you're talking about Bagel Smith?
I think it's called, is it called the Metropolitan? It's at a bar. Is that what it's called now?
The Metropolitan is across the street from the Julio Boys Club on Lawmer.
That's exactly where Milo's used to be.
Oh, okay.
So Milo's was another old school place where we would have, like, everyone had their parties there. I think when my aunt and uncle got married, she had a bridal shower there. It was like one of those old school family-owned places, and there's a couple, I can't think of their names right now. My mom, we were just talking about this recently. My mom would know their names, but they retired and moved to Florida, but that was another old school place. It was like a Creashy's. But then you had all these other places open up, like Dumont, I think, really started the food scene, and then they opened up Dumont Burger and the Dresser, which, it earned a Michelin star, and years later, I actually worked at Dumont and their sister restaurant, Dresser. I actually worked with their pastry chef. So I would do the pastries at Dumont and then work the line at night. I was like, maybe I was 20, 21 years old. And the reason I got the job there was, this is a traditional Brooklyn story, how we became friends with the owner of Dumont, Cullen. My grandfather had like a poodle. He was like an old school Irishman, very nasty. He was like a nasty, like
your grandfather, your mother's side.
Yeah, my mother's side. Very nasty old man. Like, you'll ring the bell, he'll yell out the window, "Who is it?" Like,
what was
him. What do you want? Like, that was him. So he was in McCarran Park walking. At the time, he had a poodle. His name was Pierre, right? And he used to like walk around. And my grandfather gave no shits. That's how he was. Gave no shits. Didn't have a driver's license. Used to walk to work. Delivered Budweiser for 35 years. Union beer. So my grandfather was retired. He was one of those guys who, let's just say, he enjoyed the beverages.
Sure.
So he was in McCarran Park walking Pierre. And, he had a tall boy, a Budweiser, drinking it, He used to, like, drink outside the house because he didn't want my grandmother to know.
He didn't want to get yelled at.
He's like, I'm walking the dog.
I'm surprised he wasn't picking up P's and Q's from the turkey's nest.
No, yes, you're right. He when we were younger.
Styrofoam cups.
That's right. He used to take me and my sister to McCarran Park and go to the turkey's nest.
Yeah.
So he's walking Pierre in McCarran Park. All of a sudden, a cop stops him and gives him a ticket for drinking in the public. So now he's
should
cursing.
have had it in a styrofoam cup.
He was, my grandfather was cursing. He liked you to know how he felt about life.
Yeah, of course.
So Cullen, the guy who owns Dumont, was like, "Sorry, I have to ask you. One, who are you talking to? And two, what are you so angry about?"
Right.
So he tells him and becomes friends with the owner of Dumont. And then he hired my grandfather. He would like clean up like before they would open. Like he would clean the bar, this, that, the other thing. That's what my grandfather would do. So
needed something to do. He's retired. Yeah. He's like, I gotta get out of the house and do something.
Exactly. He needed somewhere else to drink. You know what I'm saying? So, he became really good friends with the owner. And then even years after my grandfather passed away, we would still see the owner, Cullen. And, Cullen knew I went to culinary school and cooked. And I got offered a job to work at Dumont. And I remember we would do like 300 people for like dinner and brunch. People would wait an hour and a half. And that was like, I knew even before I worked there when they first opened, I knew we reached a turning point of the neighborhood because like it was like people that I've never seen before in my life. But I think that's what restaurants do to a community. It brings people together and it also brings people from different towns over because I know I do it, you do it. we'll travel to eat. And
Sure.
when you travel to eat, you really, see the town and you see the community and you see places you've never seen before. And like, I'll go somewhere to eat and be like, oh my God, this is such a pretty town or a neighborhood or whatever it is. And then it brings people in from all different areas. I think that's what happens with Dumont is like people like, oh my God, we're 2 stops away from Manhattan. It took us so quick to get here. Or maybe they were coming from Queens or whatever. And that's how we see the change. We see the change in the neighborhood. And sometimes it does start with one person. It starts with one restaurant that could kind of change a whole neighborhood.
Yeah, no, 120%. I actually, I was talking to my wife, Shaylin, because we took this walk the other day that, I used to take a lot when I was a lot younger. And I was like, babe, do you... like we were just in the West Village and then we went to the East Village and I was like, I don't really know how to describe it, but like, do you get like this different mood or emotion? And it's not really a mood or emotion. It's something more subtle than that, but it's powerful. Like when you go to these different areas and this and that. And I remember growing up and like exploring New York and being in these different places and based on, a lot of different factors, you would get that. And I still like get it today. And it's like, it's such a subtle but powerful thing. And I got to imagine that people coming into Williamsburg for the first time would feel that. You know what I mean?
And I think that what you're saying is absolutely correct because what you say by a mood and a emotion when you walk through a town is I get it because I think when you go to, if you're not from New York and let's say first time in New York, you go to Madison Avenue or Times Square and you just take a moment where you stand still, you feel the energy. You feel whether it's fast-paced, buzzy, you feel the business aspect of it. Like you see people in business suits and dresses and, they're in high heels and you see, and it's something that could be felt. Is it subtle? Yes. I think it also inspires you. Like you see these people moving fast paced, like New York, they say it's a city that never sleeps and you go there, Manhattan was my backyard. Of course I would see it all the time, but even I was inspired, going from Williamsburg to Manhattan, no matter where I was going, you see this fast pace, it's buzzy, you see people all dressed up in like business suits, maybe have like a business meeting at a restaurant dining right next to you. And it's like, you could feel that. It's like, I want that. I want that to be me. Maybe it gives you something to inspire to. It's just like very quick, fast pace. And sometimes I always think it's important to take a moment and like take things in.
Sure.
Because I think we move, go, go, go. I know I move so fast sometimes. I don't like get a chance to like stop what I'm doing and be like, oh my God, whether I'm in California, be like, oh my God, I'm in California. I never dreamt to come here. Or I'm in, standing in Manhattan. Like I never thought like I would make it here. I'm working for Bobby Flay. I'm working at Del Posto. We never really take these moments and like take a deep breath in. I'm like, oh my God, this is happening. I know I do this a lot, especially more as I get older, like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe I'm meeting this person. I'm having dinner with this person. But I do think when you go to a different neighborhood and I think when you travel, I think it's something that could be felt. Yeah. It gives you something to look up to. Whether I think coming to New York for a lot of people who come from small towns, you could feel New York. New York could be felt. You could look at a photo of New York City. I could see traffic. I could see people running late. I could see people running up, doing this, doing that. It is something that could be felt. And I think you're absolutely right. I love getting lost in a city. I love walking around, especially, there's areas of New York I've never seen before. And I lived here my whole life, and I do love that feeling. If I'm in Manhattan, I love just walking around and getting lost and seeing where I end up. I think it's best not making a plan coming to New York. Get lost in the city. Get lost in the
plan on getting lost.
Yeah, plan
on getting lost and never follow the lights. It's got to be only like 5 years ago. I always heard this legend because like kind of near where I grew up, there's a neighborhood called Gravesend, or not Gravesend. I'm sorry, Garrettson Beach. And Garrettson Beach is like this old school Irish community where it's like all fifth generation Irish. It's kind of like Southie Boston, right? And then when I came to Manhattan, I would like be like, oh, you know, there's still an Irish neighborhood in New York. It's called Garrett's Beach. And I would explain it. And every once in a while, like somebody would say, oh, but have you ever been to an Irish neighborhood in the Bronx? And I'm like, Irish neighborhood in the Bronx? What are you talking about? And one day, like years ago, I'm an adult now. I'm like past, you know, exploring and being a kid and, you know what I'm saying? Like kind of get those emotional feelings because I think it's got like something to do with like being in your youth too. I could be completely wrong about that.
You know, the youths.
The youths. It's like a time in your life. And like, I think when I go back to the West Village and the East Village, like that gets reminisced, but I get it in my head. I heard about this mythical place in the Bronx that's like this Irish neighborhood. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go over to Morris Park, which is another neighborhood where I know people in the Bronx. It's like an old school Italian neighborhood. Now there's a lot of Albanians there, but like there's still a few Italians left. And I know like the two local bars there and I know who's there. I know I can walk in and get information. So I like go over there. This must have been like probably 5 or 6 years ago. And I go, whoa, I go over to Morris Park. It's like an Irish name bar over there. I forget the name of it. But I'm like, where's this fucking Irish neighborhood I keep on hearing about? You know what I'm saying? Like, I know Mario down the block. I know the cafe over here. I'm Nino. I own Williamsburg Pizza. Look me up on fucking Google. Whatever you got to do to see I'm a legitimate. I'm not a fucking rat or I'm not like some Momo. Yeah. And they're like, oh, you're talking about Woodside. And I'm like, all right, how do I get there? They're like, all right, here's a bar. Type this in. They're like, you're going right now? I'm like, yeah. I'm like, oh, it's Friday night, bro. I'm going to go there right now. It gets a little rowdy over there. I'm like, yeah, don't worry about it. Turns out there's this, and it's like, you know, Garrett's Beach is like a peninsula. You know, there's one road in Garrettson Avenue and one road out. Like, you go down Union, you make a right on Garrettson, and now you're in this, like, kind of peninsula thing. And there's all kinds of crazy stories about Garrett's Beach, but this place, Woodside, is almost the same thing, except instead of being surrounded by water, it's surrounded by a park. And that's the reason why there's only one road in. I think it's like McLaren name. Brady, look that shit up. Woodside, Bronx. And we go over there. And for the first time, and I've been to Boston a bunch, I've been, you know, Garrett's Beach a bunch. Half the people there are speaking with what do they call a brogue? A brood?
Yeah. Brogue.
Brogue.
Yeah.
They're speaking with an Irish accent. And I'm like, how the fuck is this happening? You know what I mean? Like, where do these Irish people come from? Turns out there's a the immigration center that every person that immigrates to Ireland, I guess, has to go through. It's called Emerald Immigrations. It's located there. The Sandhogs Union, which are the guys that built the tunnels to the like new subways, you know, when the Q just made the thing from like 34th Street, like up at the Midtown, the new Q train line. A Sandhogs, which is a mostly Irish union, their thing is located there. So like Woodside has just had for, I don't know, who knows how long. Maybe it's since the 1960s. Maybe it's since the 1940s. Like, I don't know exactly. It's definitely not going back to the 1920s or anything. It's like a fairly new and recent thing. It's like every guy that you've ever met, like Irish immigrant that you see like in Midtown that's working out of like McLeany's bar or whatever. Like, that's like, oh, how'd you get to New York? I was like, I moved here. They're all coming from this one place. So there's enough of them, even if it's only 10% of them that are like, oh, you know what? I could just work at the bars here. When we went there, I mean, this is years and years after, you know, like smoking became illegal in bars and this and that. Half of the fucking bars, they're smoking cigarettes like it's fucking like 19 or 2000, whatever. There's an Irish butcher. There's an Irish restaurant. You know, you go to the bar and there's all these Irish girls from Ireland that are like in their 20s. And you're like, holy fucking
you're like,
shit.
Where am I?
Yeah. And I'm like, I'm a few miles away from where I grew up. I'm a few miles away, and it's like something you'll never know.
It's also like sometimes like I think towns have like a best kept secret.
Yeah.
Like hide them. I think Williamsburg was like a best kept secret because like, like I remember being
2 stops away from the thing,
That's
old
right.
school Italian neighborhood, all this history.
When I was in high school, like a big thing on a Friday night was like, you want to go to Union Square? Like we would hang out and like go to the movies. Like
We used to do that when I was a kid too.
Like that was a big thing.
Yeah.
Like 14, 15 years old, you're going to Union Square.
I was coming from the double R originally, but like the N train to go up there. I mean, you were down the block.
Yeah.
Like from a subway perspective, you were what? I mean, if you got on the train on Lorma, you're like Bedford, First Avenue, Third Avenue, Union Square. You're 4 stops away.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like a different world, right?
Yeah, it is. And I think, it was like a fun, exciting, like Friday night, like we went to the movies or whatever it was,
And then you walk through the park and there's all these weird people and these weird things going on.
You hang out in Union Square Park, like it's kind of like going to Disney World. Like, you're going to see something exciting. Somebody's doing something in Union Square Park. Like there's always something happening.
Yeah. No, 100%. So when do you get serious about obviously you're serious from the jump. Obviously, being a chef is something you want to do. You go to cooking school at 18 years old. But when do you really be like, not this is what I want to do, but it kind of changes your attitude. I'm saying this from the perspective of I look at Michelin star restaurants when I was a kid. Or when I was younger. And, they had the French cooktops and they had the copper pots and they had the technique. And then I look at it now and there's centrifuges and there's immersion circulators. And, every time I look back on it, there's something different. When does all that become really apparent and serious to you? Because you've kind of dived into all that, right?
Yeah, because I also think when you do I think it's any career. I can't just say it's just cooking, I think we start off where we're kind of like sponges, I didn't what you think you know about something, you actually don't know. Even looking back 5, 6, 10, 12 years ago in my career, I was like, I didn't know this then, or I'm so much better now. Or, the more you dive into something and the more you learn it from the inside out is when you completely get how things work. Why this, why that, who this person is. It's about knowing people, knowing the food, this, that, the other thing. So, I started when I was 14 and I've always had food related jobs and I went to culinary school and I've always wanted to work at the best. I always wanted to work here and do this. And, I remember applying to go work at Del Posto. I did a trail there for 3 days before I even got the job. And I remember going, oh my God, they think I'm good enough. And at the time, I think I was 22, maybe I was 23 years old when I worked at Del Posto.
How did you look at that? How did you see going into that? What was Del Posto to you when you were 23 years old? What did it mean? What did it represent?
I love the Italian cuisine. And I remember Googling the best. I Googled it. I was like, what is the best Italian restaurant in all of New York? And Del Posto ranked number 1. And, it had a 2-3 Michelin star. And I was like, and I saw that they were hiring. I was like, let me give it a whirl. What's the worst that's possibly going to happen? They're going to say no. And I remember something my dad used to say. He used to say, if you don't put yourself out there, no one's going to ever know you exist. And I didn't know what that truly meant till after he passed away. He passed away almost 5 years ago. And so I just remember he always used to say that to me. And I'm always like, what's the worst that's going to happen? So I remember I applied there and I trailed there for 3 days and they offered me a job. And, I think it's you always learn something from everywhere you work. No matter what it is. And it's such a high standards to work there, even get a job there. It was just so exciting to me. And, even years later, I remember things that I've learned from there, whether you learn about a technique or, whatever. I think everywhere we work, we learn something, and I think I started out in this career and I would just sit on my couch and watch Food Network because I wasn't old enough to work. And I think once you dive into something and you're in it, you're working, you're learning. I feel like, I think if you look back when you first started making pizza, remember you're like, I make the best pizza. And then Have you compared that till today?
I mean,
The more
sort of,
you know.
yeah. You're not 100% wrong, but definitely, one of the things my father always said to me is that I don't care if you like pump gas for a living. I don't care if you like lay drywall for a living. You better be the best gas pumper or the best drywall layer. And I really took that to heart from a young age. So like that's what kind of expanded me and kept me going down a path. But I think most people who call themselves a chef or a cook are living in a bubble. And they don't know the things that you knew, like, from the jump. Like, they didn't, like, let me look up the best restaurant. Let me go up to culinary school. Let me try to be the best. Like, I think the vast majority of cooks out there, like the kind of guys you see on, like, Kitchen Nightmares, are just that. They think they're the best and have no idea anything on the outside world except for their own view.
I think it's so important to, be humble no matter what you do. And I love learning new things. I love talking to people like yourself who, are like an encyclopedia in a way, So I think, I love learning and I love growing and I love meeting and networking with people. And I think that's so important in this career. And the more you do that and the more you're able to put your walls down and, you create such a circle and where everyone builds each other up and everyone helps each other out. I mean, like, you all do well, you all succeed. I never look at somebody and say, get jealous or get this, get that, the other thing. I love to be in a circle where everyone builds each other up and everyone works with each other and help somebody out. It's not about, like, right now, if you said to me, hey, Allison, I need this, I'm always the first one to say, okay, I don't want anything in return. I do it from, my heart because I want to do it or because I like a person and they're like the same. And I think you're in that sense where you do things from the kindness of your heart. Somebody says, hey, Nina, I want you to do this or help me out with this. You do it because you want to. It's not like because you need something in return.
Sure.
I think you need a lot of this in this career because, there's always, especially in such a cutthroat career where there's somebody who's going to steal your recipe or want to destroy you or bring you down. And I feel like there's always those people who are kind of hawking it, if you will,
Sure.
ready to, for you to mess up or for you to bring you down. I'm the kind of person like, why do we need to be like that? I'm not like that at all.
I mean, I think it's advantageous not to be like that because, like, I mean, old in the neighborhood, one hand washes the other, both hands wash their face. First of all, there's no such thing as a secret recipe where, like, everybody has a supercomputer in your pocket. And I don't think, like, I mean, it was a little bit harder to articulate back then. I mean, hindsight's like crazy, but I think even back then, I mean, if you don't have the atmosphere and you don't have like the thing built and whatever, like what's the best recipe? And you don't have the ability to train and teach and execute, like what's like the world greatest recipe for anything worth? It's not really worth anything, because like people don't just come to a restaurant for a cheesecake recipe. You know what I mean? They're coming for a lot more than that. People are going to sit down and like spend their money and, you know what I mean? Like they're looking to get service. There's a lot of different things and depending on your concept, like where that goes, like it's crazy. And I mean, the way I look at it is just like, if I'm by myself and I'm just like keeping these things secret, it's like I might be able to, I can tell you something about pizza or something I'm doing new with fermentation that's going to light a light bulb in your head. You can tell me something that you're doing like by refining a certain ingredient and a new technique that is going to light a light bulb in my head and I'm going to do something and I'm going to be like, hey, guess what? Look what I did with this. And you're going to be like, holy shit, that's fucking awesome. And like the same thing vice versa. And that like, kind of communal brain, that communal thinking that like the internet is created and social media is created, but doing it on a personal level, I mean, that's one of the major things that I think has like grown how much people know and how much people do like in today's day. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
for sure.
Think about how much you've learned. I can think about how much I've learned. I mean, in the past 4 months, my thinking has completely changed about whatever I know and like grow.
Absolutely, but I think that should be with anything. I think your mind could change. Whether in a couple of years, a couple of months, a couple of weeks. I think the more you learn and the more you understand a certain topic, or the more you're willing to research and talk to people, I think, your way of thinking could change, whether, about food and who you hang out with and what chefs you talk to. One of my favorite chefs that I've worked with and that I love speaking to, and has one of the biggest hearts that I've ever met, is Chef Elizabeth Faulkner, who, had Citizen Cakes out in San Francisco, and she was nominated for the James Beard Award, and she's such a well-respected chef, which a lot of people think she just does, sweets, but she does a lot of savory. And for the James Beard Award, I believe she was nominated for pastry. But I love working with her. I've worked with her as her sous chef at a few food and wine events, and I talked to her, and she's became such a great friend and mentor. And the way she thinks about food and approaches it, like this it's like untraditional way, if you will. And she opened the way, I think, about flavors. And I remember we were at the Pebble Beach Food and Wine, and she said, I think I'm gonna make a miso tiramisu. And I'm like, okay, cool. So I was like prepping another dish me and her were doing. I think we did like leeks vinaigrette. And I'm watching her from like my side eye, and I notice she doesn't have any recipes, and she makes these beautiful lady fingers. Like she's like put flour and whatever else she's making, and they come out of the oven. And they're the most beautiful lady fingers you ever seen in your life. Like she made lady fingers, like with no recipe. And I was like, you didn't measure anything. She goes, I've done this like 1,000 times. Like, she's like, I know. So I go try one of these lady fingers, and they just like break beautifully in your mouth, and they're delicious and they're flavorful. And you taste a little bit of like, I think she put like orange zest in them, and you could taste it. And it's just like perfect, So then,
and you said like miso, like,
yeah.
like
so she made
udami bomb, right?
Yeah, so she first started with these beautiful ladyfingers, and then she made an Italian meringue, and then she made a zabaione with sake, and she like folds these two together. And as she's folding these two, I'm helping her mix this. It's in a big bowl because it's a food and wine event. She takes white miso paste and fish sauce and puts it together. So first I'm thinking, that's weird, a little crazy, but I'm like, I could see how this is going to work, And I tasted it. And like, I literally wanted to take my clothes off, dive in this bowl, and hang out there for a couple of hours and like smoke a cigarette, which I don't do, because it was so delicious. Do you ever have something so good you're just like, I can't believe this right now? And it's like, it tasted like salted caramel. So this her idea of taking miso and fish sauce and knowing until it tastes like salted caramel was something so untraditional and just so beautifully like well done. I just remember going, huh.
Yeah, I mean, there's almost like a science behind all this. Like, what did you seek her out to, kind of hook up with her? And
so it was actually really random how we became friends. So I did this women's chef conference in Minneapolis, and I kind of saw her there, but I didn't like talk to her very much.
Right.
So then, like a few weeks later.
But you knew who she was.
Of course.
Yeah.
I grew up watching her on TV, and I knew all about her. And it's like so hard to like approach somebody like, hey, I'm a big fan. And then I think to myself, that person gets that probably a lot. Like whatever I'm saying, it's not really important. So I remember like a few weeks later, I worked with my friends over at Urbani Truffles, which are the world's leading truffle purveyor. I think they own like 70% of the world's truffles. Their big headquarters is over in Umbria, and they're like 6 generations. Olga Urbani does it now. So I
love her. Yeah, I remember seeing you on Facebook when you were doing a lot of work with them.
I do a lot of work, I've done a lot of work with Urbani. Even now, I'm such really good friends with those people. And, everybody knows Urbani Truffles. And even now, if they have a big event going on, my friend Sabrina calls me up like, hey, Allison, want to do this? I'm like, yeah, sure, cool.
Yeah, they're amazing. I was doing like $1,000 pizza like years ago for something. And like, I ended up having my camera guy there. Tony Hawk ended up showing up randomly. Like while we were shooting, like somebody called me. They were like, Nino, we need you to do $1,000 pizza. I called up Urbani. I was like, hey, can I get some truffles? I don't have any money, but like I'm getting a phone call. They're like, yo, come down, get whatever you want. They like hooked me up. Like, and I had called like a camera guy friend of mine, and he was like, what's going on? And I'm like, listen, I'm making $1,000 pizza. I don't know if I'm gonna ever make $1,000 pizza again. I need you to like come down to my shop like in the next 2 hours. And he's like, all right, bet. And he comes, and Tony Hawk and his 2 kids end up trying to get into the shop while the door's already locked. And my the GM at the shop had no idea it was Tony Hawk. He was from like Georgia, not the state, the country. And he was, I was like, is that Tony? I was like, bro, Roddy, let Tony Hawk in. And we locked the door behind Tony Hawk. And there's actually a video like on Brooklyn Pizza Crew, because like then my camera guy just filmed Tony Hawk instead of filming what we were filming with. I think it was like New York Live or one of these different, like, kind of more local shows that we were filming this for. And if you watch the video, you can see in the background that, like, you know, he's filming Tony Hawk, and, like, there's another camera crew in the background, which was the camera crew that was supposed to be there.
Tony Hawk was most important.
Yeah,
like, you
yeah,
can't
I
make
thought
this shit
so.
Up.
I was,
but, you know, only in New York.
Yeah, definitely only in New York.
Yeah.
But it's... You know,
but
I mean, amazing people. Like, you would think, like...
you randomly run into people. Like, I remember my friend Sabrina, who does marketing from Urbani, was like, hey, Allison, we're hosting this event to start up this, that, the other thing. So I walk into Urbani Truffles, and who's there? Elizabeth Faulkner, right? So Sabrina's like, I'll introduce you to Elizabeth, right? So, you know, of course, I'm like, try to act cool, you know? I'm so excited to meet, you know, Elizabeth, especially being a young female chef. She's such, you know, set such a great path for people like me. And so she's like, this is Allison Fasano. Like, you know, she works here at Urbani. She helps us out. She's so talented. Elizabeth starts talking to me. And then Elizabeth's like, hey, I'm hosting this event here in like 2 weeks. Do you want to come? And I'm like, yeah, I do. And then Elizabeth goes, wait, you cook? And I go, yeah. She goes, can you help me cook at this event? And I'm like, yeah, I could help you come.
How old are you then?
No, this is only like a couple of years ago.
Okay.
So I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go help Elizabeth Faulkner, right? So I show up, and she's like, one of my other friends will help me out in the morning. We did an event for like 100 people, right? So I show up. Sylvia Barbon's there. So Sylvia's been on Top Chef. She owns Larina over in Brooklyn, straight off the boat Italian. So I walk in, Sylvia's like, hey, Allison. Elizabeth goes, oh my God, you two know each other. I'm like, yeah, we do. I love Sylvia. So then like it became like a trio of like, you know, we're all hanging out and whatever. So I help Elizabeth at this event, right? 100 people, it's me and her. So, you know, I just work how I normally work. And at the end, she goes, I felt like we worked together for a really long time. Like every time I was about to ask you to do something, you were already doing it. And I remember she goes, you want to come to Pebble Beach with me? And I was just like, yeah, I do. So that's kind of how it happened. We just like, sometimes you work with somebody, it meshes and it feels like you've been working with each other, knowing each other for such a long time. I think that's a beautiful thing with this career. And I was just so excited to get a chance to continue to work with her. Anytime she's like, can you help me with this? I'm like, yeah. You know, so I love learning something new, no matter, you know, what I've done in my career. I just love meeting and networking with people, you know, like Elizabeth, like a Sylvia. And through them, I met so many other amazing people. Like I remember we went to, you know, have one of those after parties like all these food and wines have. And like the guys who own Alinea, which is a restaurant out in Chicago, they were named one of the best restaurants in the world.
What do they do to make them the best?
I mean, you know, Chef Grant is there. And if you don't know anything about Chef Grant or Alinea, it's a very whimsical dining experience. Like these guys take food and cooking to a whole nother level. Like they have these things, they're called edible balloons. Have you seen this?
Yeah,
like,
they do a lot of molecular gastronomy.
Yes, a lot of molecular gastronomy, and it's really just a dining experience. You know, like they do this thing where, you know, they'll drop this centerpiece and it looks like a little campfire and you're eating your food and the guy comes over, removes something from the campfire. I mean, meanwhile, your pork was cooking in front of you this whole time, but you had no idea. It's a very whimsical dining experience, you know? And I remember I met these owners from Alinea, and they're the coolest, nicest guys you've ever met, very elbows on the table. And the guys were like, we love talking to chefs. We love to, meet and network with people. We don't know everything. And I remember like taking this moment and going, oh my God, the guys who own one of the best restaurants in the world are saying they don't know everything. And it kind of says like, how many times have you met people like, we know everything about this or that, the other thing? People say it all the time. And I'm one of those really humble people. I love meeting and love learning new things. I'll never, no matter how much I know about a topic, I'll never ever say I know everything. And I think for these guys who own one of the best restaurants in the world to say they don't know everything was such a like, oh my God moment. Like how many times have you met people that says I know everything they know? And you're like, okay.
And it's literally guys that don't know anything and don't
don't
know everything. Don't know. I mean, it's definitely been like I've always been of the mindset that I could always learn. At the same time,
I think it's a respect thing. Like people like, oh, Nino knows pizza. I respect him.
Right. Well, I mean, the right people. I mean, there's still a lot of people out there that whatever. And like that could, if you run into enough of that, like it could give you a big head. And it's one of the biggest struggles where it's like very, very recently, like I got exposed to like, some ovens that vicariously I had experience with, but I had no idea what they were about and where they were from, and blah, blah, blah. And it just flipped everything I knew about ovens that I know. And like, I thought at like this point in my career, the amount of exposure I've had and like what I've been around, like I know every oven that's like made for like cooking pizza. And like that all got flipped in my head, and it just like puts you back into this crazy place where you're like, holy fucking shit. Now there's like a whole universe that I got to learn about. And like everything that I knew is like kind of wrong. And I wasn't looking at like, we don't know. I've never heard anybody in the pizza industry say, thermo loads, or like the way that like some of these things are created, thermo mass, you know what I mean? And we got to look at the number of the thermo mass of this oven, and no one's ever said that. It's just like, well,
you just basically say, yo, what's the temperature of that? Basically.
Right. Well, and then you have electric, and people describe that a certain way. I'll even like, all right, so a few years back, there's a pretty cutting edge company like that was bringing in a lot of used equipment, or a lot of new equipment, Forza Forni. All right. And they make, they bring in the Acunto ovens, which are what Anthony Mangieri from Una Pizza Napoletan uses. And they have to bring these things in already built. And they're hand brick by brick made, like incredible ovens. If you want like to make, the oldest school Neapolitan traditional pizza, and you're not using this oven, you're doing like the wrong thing almost. You know what I mean? Because, and there's nothing wrong with Pavese's and Mariforni's and these other ovens, but like this is like a hand-built oven, like in Italy. It's got like all this history and this and that. And they were bringing in the diving arm, the fork mixers, and the spirals. And kind of the education that was being given out like then when this started to happen was like, all right, the diving arm mixer is it's replicating the motions of your hands, right? Mm-hmm. And it's being real gentle on the gluten, so it's not fucking with the proteins, and it's like a hand mix. So that's the best thing you can do. All right, the fork mixer is the next best thing, and then the spiral is like the good enough diploma. And then a few years later, you got the whole Canotto crew with like Alfonso Seviello and Francesco Martucci and Carlos Sammarco and Raffaele Bonta. And these guys are mixing on spiral mixers at high speeds. And they're doing it with science. Like, they're doing it like, hey, listen, we have to reach full gluten development with the least amount of friction with raising the temperature the least amount. And it just throws everything you think you know on its fucking face, because it's like, okay, temperature affects gluten. Spiral mixers have a very low friction rate when compared to planetary mixers. So a planetary mixer is like KitchenAid. Now, if you mix in a planetary mixer, it's called a planetary mixer because it goes around like a planet, right? Mm-hmm. But you're banging up against the dough or against the walls. So you're creating heat. And they're looking at it like the science is pretty sound that, heat is affecting gluten development. So especially if you use a super high hydration doughs or even, even like a 65% hydration dough, but with like a flour that doesn't have dough conditioners and chemicals in it to bring it up to high gluten development quicker. You have to employ these techniques, and then, your whole world gets thrown on its head. And like, obviously, like, you don't go about it by taking people for its word, but then you take the word that they're saying, you go look into it, and you're like, holy fucking shit. Yeah. There's all this stuff behind this. And then it, I feel like everything I know today is going to be different than everything I know 5 years from now.
Oh, yeah,
and
absolutely.
The journey is never going to fucking end. And, that's just what it is. Because a lot of these things, they're still for the first time being understood in a really, complex and dynamic way. I mean, how old is modernist cuisine? You know what I mean? That really took stuff down in the microscope. And like, obviously there's tried and true traditional things, but like, I think a lot of the old school, even like the high-end French cooking and the high-end Michelin star shit, it's like, you have to do this because this is how this works. But they weren't telling you exactly why it works. Like the why in it was like kind of like an idea. It's like, well, we think this is why, But
I think there's always people that go against the grain, and we're like, haha, I want to go against science. And
yeah.
Let me try something new. And I think that's, in our career, we are constantly experimenting.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we're always like, wait, if we could do this, I wonder if I could do this. And it's like, that's what cooking is. Like, how many times do you experiment with different doughs and flours and waters and temperatures and yeast? And, I'm like, it's with anything, you're experimenting. And that's what cooking is about. And sometimes your, mistake turns into the greatest thing you'll ever make.
Literally half of the breakthroughs are based on a mistake. And it's just like, you were trying to do something, this and this happened during the day, the mistake happened. But I think both things go together, because when you make the mistake, you got to understand how to replicate that. I mean, in bread making and pizza making, like, if you have your hydrations and your temperature's already set and you make the mistake, you're going to be able to figure out what part of the process and what that mistake led to the great result. So,
but also I think you have to, that's the thing is, remember, like people always say, you have to be willing to fail.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to fail, try, experiment, because that's how you learn. It's kind of like learning on your own in a way. Like right now you could be at home in your kitchen and you're experimenting and you're trying different things. It's like, if you don't try, you'll never know, if something works or it doesn't work.
I think there's two sides to it. I think if you don't like respect the foundations, and you're just like, you know what, I'm going to figure this out, I think you're going down a path that, like, you're never going to get completely there. I think if you do respect the foundations, but you come to a thing where, like, I know everything and there's nothing else I can learn, and this is the way it has to be done, and if anyone that doesn't do it like this is wrong. You know what I mean? I think either of those paths never are going to lead to, like, a greater understanding and, like, a real evolution and in the cuisine and in what you're trying to do and getting to a certain place of personalizing it. I think you have to have both things. So, like, I mean, from your background, I mean, it's kind of important. I'm not saying you got to go to, like, some fancy French cooking school, but, like, you probably know the basic techniques and this and that. Those are a foundation of what you do. I mean, you almost have to learn that, like working at Del Posto and this and that, whether you're aware of it or not. It's like coming with the territory.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
Like, whether
I think it's, you learn as you grow, and things I know or thought I knew when I was like 20 and you get to 30 and you're like, okay, you actually almost feel your progress. You feel your progress as you grow in this career. Like, oh my God, I can't believe I do this or that, the other thing. I can't believe I've done this. I'm one of those people that I think we reflect back on our career and what we thought we knew or what we do know now or what we could learn 5 years from now. I think when you're passionate about something, I think you're hungry to learn when you're passionate about something. Like you want to know how everything works, why this, why that, the flour, the grain, the this, that, the other thing. And it's like, it's what drives us. It's almost like we become obsessed, if you will. And I think that's, what it's a part of a passionate person. Somebody that I think back who's obsessed with something is Chef Nancy Silvington, who's based out of California. If you ever watch Chef's Table, or if you're only going to watch one episode, watch Nancy Silvington on Netflix. I watched it like 10 times. But she becomes obsessed. Like she was making pizza, and you hear these guys tell her story, and people are going weak in their knees talking about Nancy's pizza or her bread. And she had a bakery. It's called La Brea Bakery out in California. And you would show up to a dinner table and you had La Brea Bakery bread, and people were like, oh my God, you have Nancy's bread. Like, how did you get that? Type of thing, and, she would sell out and close, like she would close the doors. People were right around the corner. And the biggest reason she closed the bakery is because there became such a high demand. They said to her, we should get machines to do the bread. And then Nancy was like, no, I want to do it myself. Like, I want to roll the bread. I want to do this and I want to do that. So she couldn't keep up with the demand. And, they were talking about bringing machines in. She's like, nah, I don't want to do it anymore. Or even when she made her pizza recipe, you hear, in her Chef's Table, people talk about Nancy's pizza recipe. It's so untraditional. There's so many ingredients. Like, in Naples, people would like lose their mind if they hear about Nancy's recipe, but she tried it 1,000 times, different water, and if she added a pinch of salt and a pinch of this and a pinch of that, and you just practice and you go back to the drawing board. It needs this, needs that, like a sugar component. Let's use a different yeast. Let's use this type of water. Let's use this type of flour. And she became obsessed with the pizza dough. But then you tried this final product that she has that she still serves at, her restaurants today, Pizzeria Moza and, her restaurant. And it's like, it brings you to your knees how good it is. Like, that's this, you could taste something. You could taste that she was obsessed. You could taste the passion in it. I think that's what it's all about. And I hear her story and hear Nancy talk about, things she enjoys. And you hear other people. And Nancy won the James Beard Award. And you hear other people talk about Nancy and how respected, she is. But she just became obsessed. Because she's a passionate person, and that's what she does. That's all of us. And how would you, regardless if it's, cooking or not, that's the kind of person that I love, is somebody who becomes obsessed with something and throws everything they got into it to get such an incredible product. How would you not want to inspire to be like a Nancy? I think we all are kooky and crazy in that way, but I think it comes with the territory. Like, we want to be obsessed about something.
We got to. I'm sure you didn't check it out because you would have brought it out for me. But recently we did the New York Virtual Pizza Festival, and Nancy was one of the people on there. But on that note, we'll be right back. Are we back?
Back in the New York groove, right?
Back in the New York groove. So Al, I understand that's a passion of yours, that like you like to tell a story in your food, and you're really passionate about like what you consider like Nona Style cooking, Nona Style food. Like, what does that mean, and what is that about? What are the ingredients about in that? And how are you elevating that? Like, explain all that to me. Run your mouth. You're good at running your mouth. That's like me. Right. I'm here to listen.
Gift the gab. Gift the gab. You know what I'm saying?
Gift the gab all day. How you doing out there?
Yeah, bunch of momos listening. Right? What I like to call it Nona Style. It's like big, bold, organic, rustic, like food that gives you a hug on the inside. Like, I think, I've always enjoyed like I think everyone enjoys like grandma's cooking. You know,
Of
whether
course.
you're eating a big bowl of lasagna or it's an eggplant parm or, you know, whatever your culture, whatever your background is, you know, it's food that you could taste. It's like food that gives you a hug on the inside. You know, like we call it like homey food. Like, meatloaf is homey. When you have to describe meatloaf as like a homey style food, it's like food that you ate growing up. And, I just love, especially with the Italian cuisine, it's about showcasing each ingredient and allowing each ingredient a chance to be the star of the show. It's not putting, a whole bunch of ingredients in a dish. If you look at most of an Italian recipes, it's about, minimal ingredients, but really just showcasing all of them. You know, whether you're doing a dish with tomatoes or you're doing a dish with asparagus or whatever the season is it's really about highlighting each ingredient. And, I love big, bold, like layers of flavor food. You know, when you taste something, it's kind of like, oh, I taste this, I taste that. Or, I'm getting hints of this. That's what I love. And I think with the Nona Style, do I modernize it? Yes. So, am I doing your traditional grandma lasagna recipe with dried pasta you got on aisle 12 at Key Foods? No, I'm not. I'm making, fresh pasta. Maybe we're making fresh ricotta, or maybe I'm trying to make you the best lasagna you've ever had in your life. Something, I think a lot of times when we eat lasagna, we always describe it as heavy. You ever have, like, you order gnocchis and people say, well, it's a heavy dish. Let's lighten that up, because when you make fresh pasta to make lasagna, it's lighter. When you make your own ricotta, it's lighter. And it's taking something that people think they know and love, but I'm going to try to make it the best you've ever had, which using the best ingredients, making fresh pasta, making all these things from scratch to, you almost lose that traditional way of thinking of something.
So, Ashbet, really quick, I got to do two things right here. First of all, I got to fix your mic. And that's my fault.
I take partial responsibility too.
Yeah. And you fucking should, Brady, you piece of shit.
Yeah.
Just kidding, Braids. We love Braids.
F for today.
So, like, can you walk us down the path? We were talking about lasagna. Like, how do you elevate? Here, let's do this. Let's do that. And then, like, you can, like, kind of figure it out from there. There's going to be a lot of guys. I'm in the pizza world. There's a lot of guys in the pizza world that don't understand, like, the fine dining world. Like, how do you, like, and to be fair to grandmas, I'm gonna tell you something, Allison, that's really dear to my heart that I've been like kind of looking at for a long time. So, I have like girl cousins, Vanessa, Lindsay, Aaron, and they have my Nona's recipes written down, but they were written down in like the 2000s, and kind of how I look at those things is like, well, my grandmother, what she was buying, I mean, she didn't have access to the internet. Like the only source of information back then, which, for what we're talking about, there was no source, was, your rich uncle's encyclopedia and yada, yada, yada. It's not their fault. Like, they had what...
You use ingredients that you have.
That you have.
Absolutely.
All right? And they had no concept of...
Measurements, essentially.
Not only measurements, but, like, just like that. I mean, when you look at, like, the history of Italian cooking... dried pasta, and that was a luxury ingredient. You know what I mean? Going back to as long as it was an ingredient. We don't see it like that today. And of course, like, it's like make fresh pasta. But the reality is, if you look at the history of it, that was the case. So, you have it from the market, you have it from the fresh pasta makers, but then you go decades and decades on, and the recipe is changing because, it's a little bit of ignorance to like, we have no idea. It's just like, let's make it easier. You know what I mean? Okay, this works. I don't want to get into all that. I just want to lay that out there because I think it's important to, let people know that, like, your Nona wasn't wrong for using Barilla pasta after it got switched to, like Teflon dyes in Chicago or whatever it was. And not the greatest, quality ingredient.
Yeah, and I also think it depends on what you could find locally at your grocery store is a big thing. Because I grew up, we had C-Towns and Key Foods, I mean, there was no Stop and Shops or, Whole Foods in Brooklyn.
Sure.
So
I still see grandmas today in Williamsburg, and they, you have Napoli Bakery, you have Zolo's Fish Market. But a lot of grandmothers, my grandmother, growing up was in New Jersey, and, she went to Caldor, and I don't even fucking remember what these places were called, but like, in the pork stores back in the day when she was growing up and when she learned from her grandmother, there was no such thing as like granulated garlic. There was no such thing as garlic salt, blah, blah, blah. These were all new things, and they didn't look at them in the same ways with the same education that we have today. But like, tell me, and with that being said, how would you, I mean, you're a daughter of this. How would you elevate this? Because I want, my aunts, I want, everybody that's from Italian community to know from a woman that respects tradition, that respects culture. How do you elevate it? Because there's nothing wrong with that.
No, of course, there's nothing wrong about, I loved, my grandma, like I said, was Jewish. She was Russian Jewish. She lived in an apartment over on Devou Street. Her neighbor was Italian and taught her how to make lasagna. So my grandma would make lasagna for Christmas. I know that sounds like a crazy story, but it's true. But there's nothing wrong with that. And that's the hominess that we love. But I think as the years go on, whether you're a chef or not, you think of ways to make something your own. And me as a chef, as a creative person, as somebody who makes pasta and wants to, experiment making fresh ricotta, that's my way of almost paying homage to the lasagna I've known and loved. Like, do we love that? Yes. But let me try making it my own. Let me, get into my chefy hat and think of ways to keep it traditional, but let's elevate it a little bit. So I think it's not being able to fail, to experiment of, it's just sometimes I think to myself, what something actually is. Okay, it's pasta later with ricotta and there's a bolognese and this, that, the other thing. And it's a dish that originates from the region of Lombardy. And it's just like, in my chefy head, I'm just kind of breaking down what all these ingredients are and how can I make them better? And, what would be a different type of cheese and this, that, the other thing. I love Nona Style. I love grandma's cooking, but also it's like, let me just recreate this a little bit.
Sure, using what you know. And I think I've seen in the past, like, I've seen guys years and years and years ago. I don't remember who it was. I don't remember the names, but they were winning like awards for adding curry spice and doing lamb to like meatballs. And I like worked at a spot that like they were trying to emulate that and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I don't think you understand what's going on over here. I think that guy used the ingredients he used and the way that he used it because, that was his take on it. But that doesn't mean that you got to like copy that. That doesn't mean that we can't use pork and veal and beef or just pork and use our knowledge of manipulating like meats and manipulating ingredients to create like a super flavorful thing in a way that like, our grandmothers weren't classically trained French cooks. You know what I mean? They were simple things. And we just know more now, and there's nothing wrong with that on how to manipulate ingredients. Like, we learn techniques that we can apply to our traditional culture.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think you're absolutely right. But I think as, how many times do we see things getting recreated? I mean, that's, especially in our world, dishes are constantly being recreative. Like we spoke about this. It's like cacio e pepe.
Ah.
Yeah. It's one of the most, it's a traditional, old school, easy dish. It really is easy. Anybody can make it.
Super easy.
I bet you at any given time, we all have all those ingredients in our house at any given time. But, you go to these restaurants, like in the last couple of years, I would say, what do we say? A little over 5 years or so.
Yeah,
and every restaurant's doing cacio e pepe. And it's not even just the traditional pasta form, but you had people like Chef Missy Robbins over here in Williamsburg at Lilia doing cacio e pepe frittelles, which are like almost like a zeppoli, if you will. It's like, that's kind of like the mind of a chef, if you will. Okay, cacio e pepe, that's really cool. It's black pepper and, grated cheese, whether you're, Parmesan, Pecorino, or whatever. How can I make that my own? Oh, I'm also make it into a zeppoli. I think that's the mind of a chef that would think that way. Let's take something that is so familiar, it's so hot right now, but I'm also make this into my own. I think that's like the mind of a chef and how a chef's minds work. Like taking something so traditional, something so familiar, and then kind of running with it.
Was she like? I wonder. Was she? I'm not familiar with that at all, and that's my own ignorance. But
you could see
I
her
know
at Lilia and Missy in Williamsburg.
Renato Ruggiero.
Yeah.
You know Renato Ruggiero?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's all I know about him. No, keep going.
Well, Renato Ruggiero, he's a young kid in Naples, and he does like a cacio e pepe. He does a pistachio pesto. He does like a peas and kind of like bolognese, like almost like what you would put in arancini, but everything's with bucatini. And then he makes it real thick. That gets put into a pizza tray, cooled, and then it gets put into like these 3-inch deep by 3-inch wide molds. And then after that, and they cool down, he dips it in like a batter, like almost like a beer batter, but he's probably not making with beer. He's probably making a simple batter. Who knows what he's doing? He's like consulting around the world right now. And then it's like this simple thing. Like Italy's got like this bad problem with being like, okay, if somebody in Italy didn't invent it, then it's not authentic Italian. All right. And meanwhile, I know guys from Napoli food porn site that are, it almost looks like a grease trucks from Rutgers University sandwich, but with much better ingredients because the guys are located in Italy.
Yeah.
Where instead of the American cheese, it's burrata. But they're throwing French fries and, instead of putting, which is to me a revolution, instead of putting the cheese on the actual like hero, they're putting some oil and like caramelizing that cheese by itself on its own while they cook the sausage, while they cook the broccoli rabe, and then combining that afterwards on a griddle. There's so many things that like can be done. I don't think anybody owns anything. I think like everything can be delicious in its own right and like have, the people you're around and the people that you're dealing with and looking up to are obviously like they're very passionate. They're very educated. They know what their ingredients are. They know how to work them. When it comes to that, I think that's the most important thing. And I think, if we were to come out with, in the 1970s, the things that we're seeing today, and present those things, it would be like, okay, you're not traditional, but this is fucking incredible. And then it becomes traditional.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think that's how, the culinary field works. It's always evolving. You know what I'm saying? Like have you looked at a cookbook from like the 80s?
I have.
You remember the photos?
Let me show you something because I have it right here.
Okay, because like even the photos you look at.
I found this on the. Oh my god.
The photos.
Brady, get in on this. So I found this on the street.
You did?
I found this on the street. So these are mint condition, Bon Appetit recipes. This is from April 1990. There's
This
ones
is
from
pretty
1988.
amazing. I would have taken this. This is from March 1990. This was, I was a month old.
Yeah. And what does that say? The best of Italy?
Yeah, and then just even like the photos you see, whether it's a magazine or like, you know, recipes, like the way the photos were taken in these are no way that we would take them now. Like, can we just like tomato and bell pepper sauce goes with fish? Look at the fish. There's no possible way that today a food stylist would let a chef take this photo.
100%.
But I think you could see the, you know, the ever evolving, you know.
And this is Bon Appetit magazine.
Bon Appetit magazine.
Like the top of the top.
You know, I think like you could see how food evolves, and just by flipping through, you know, magazines. Like, you know, anybody like a food stylist right now, one, you know, this photo's not even in focus, but, you know, a food stylist.
Risotto.
A risotto.
This brand new thing.
You know, like food stylists be like, we need some color, do a bird's eye view taking this photo. So I think you could see the ever evolving, you know, there's a very happy chef.
What is that ravioli right there? What the fuck is that? That looks disgusting.
Like, it looks like it took them 3 hours to take this photo because that's how long this ravioli stood in the window for, you know?
Wait, can I see what's under that? What is that stamp? Is that, please, you know what that looks like? Oh, used by June 9th? Okay.
Yeah.
No, that almost looks like
But
one
I think
of
you
the
could,
Cosetta stamps that I have.
You know, I think you could see the ever evolving, you know, food, especially the culinary scene, through magazines and photos and recipes, you know, even from the 80s to the 90s to the 2000s, how photos of food were, you know, perceived. You know, today we would never put this on a cover of a magazine.
Right.
You know, we would have something that makes your mouth water, you know, something that you could almost taste through a photo. You know, maybe it was fresh pasta. Maybe it was like a cheese pull, because that's what we know today is a cheese pull is cool. You know, so I think you could see the ever evolving food career, the food, you know, culture through photos, especially like this is Exhibit A right here. This is the perfect example. You know, I look at old school cookbooks like Julia Child or even Wolfgang Puck, and you see, you know, how these photos were taken. Like Julia Child literally has a piece of like, it would be like salmon, and there's like a baked potatoes right next to it. And back in the day, you know, Julia Child is so well respected. She, you know, paved the way, you know, in this career. And you see the photos in these books. And at that time, that was the creme of the crop right there.
Yeah.
You know, now you put it side by side with another cookbook and you think,
Doesn't even really stand up anymore.
but that was just a sign of the times, really.
No, it is a sign of the times. So, like, that kept in mind, and that's what I want to make clear for everybody. I want to make clear that from, like, my aunts, for my uncles, for my grandmother, that rest in peace, she's passed away. Like, obviously, she can't listen to this. But, like, with that in mind, like, what would you... Like, I mean, at this point in the podcast, only, like, real believers and real motherfuckers are fucking listening. So, like, walk us through, like,
or
Allison Fasano's modern version of a lasagna. What the fuck is it?
First, I'm, you know, fresh making pasta.
Sure.
You know, you're making fresh ricotta. I'm making a bolognese. I don't like, you know, a lot of people, especially a lot of grandmothers put, you know, fresh mozzarella or something like that. I like to do a bolognese with the, you know, bechamel. And, you know, like I love a lot of fresh herbs, especially if you're doing a like 3-meat bolognese, you know, veal, pork, and beef, bechamel, like Parmesan, multiple layers. And if you put it in the oven, and the best, you have to let it sit, and you should eat it. I like to eat it the next day.
I agree.
You know?
I agree.
So it all
you gotta let it
in.
like marinate the day.
Yeah,
right?
And then you reheat it. That's when it tastes best, on a reheat. And also you could cut it a lot better too, because lasagna gets a little messy. But, you know, just making the pasta, making the ricotta, like just, you know, hitting everything right on the money and really paying attention to each component of a dish, you know?
Yeah. I recently, you know, took this recipe off of the guys from Chef Steps website, where they did a 24-layer lasagna. and kind of like molded that to be like more like my grandma's lasagna and this and that, but took the techniques that they laid out, and then it's like you leave it for a day, and then they chop it into these kind of rectangles,
and they seared
seared it.
That was like a Del Posto thing.
And then put out, I mean, they probably partially got it off of that, I'm sure. I mean, those guys are gangsters by its own, but like everybody's getting stuff off of everybody. Like nothing's like really original.
The best way to learn and grow, you know? And I always think like if I'm watching a food cooking show or I'm, you know, at an event or this, that, the other thing, a lot of times it's so much more important than the recipe. I always think that it's about the techniques that somebody's using and the stories that they're telling is the most important. You know, that's my favorite part of watching a cooking show or talking to these chefs, or, you know, whether I'm online and Googling videos of, you know, recipes or whatever I'm looking at. It's about the techniques somebody's using and the stories that they're telling. That's how we connect, and that's how we bring people together. And that's kind of like that elbows on the table type of food, which I'm all about.
I think also that story is like a never ending story. I mean, like, I'm learning from Michael Vittorio from Vittorio's restaurant, his mother, you know, who's got 18 chickens in her backyard. And I'm like, okay, I need chickens. I need fresh eggs. I got to like add sustainability to, what I do. You know what I mean? I want people to be able to eat fresh made eggs. And, you know, obviously, like, I can't make a place that's 100 restaurants right now with that, but at least one where maybe we grow all the tomatoes. I mean, maybe we, you know, harvest and raise the chickens for most of those eggs, and we, you know, find a guy who's like a bug guy and trade him with, you know, vermicompost in order to get those eggs to where they have the nutrients where they're like that amber red, which only comes from like, you know, chickens eating insects and blah, blah, blah. And, you know, it doesn't have to happen all by once. And if it's not that, it doesn't make it not legitimate. But continuing to go in that direction, I mean, you know, talking about Mikey Vittorio, though, like you were working at a restaurant. You told me, I don't know a lot about it. I'd love you to explain it to me. You had a place in Long Island you were the executive chef of, right?
Yeah. And actually, what
was it called?
Harley's was a steakhouse.
Oh, it was. And where was it?
It was in Farmingdale. And actually, when I moved out to Long Island a couple of years ago. And when I first moved out, I was still working in Manhattan. I worked for Bobby Flay. So I took this. Somebody was like, you know, you should, you know, you cook different. You should bring your New York City style of cooking to Long Island. So we took this executive chef job at a steakhouse, and we dried aged our own steaks. But I also like to, you know, work my culinary muscle. And I don't think a lot of people realize that at a steakhouse. You know, I like braised octopus, and I would do this, you know, sometimes I would run specials and I would make my own mozzarella, or, you know, I would make fresh pasta in house and used, you know, the trimmings from, you know, this, after we used to butcher the steaks after they were dried aged, and I used to make a ragu, like roast the bones and make a ragu and make fresh pasta, you know, doing that whole no waste technique. And actually was one of the first female chefs on Long Island to ever earn 3 stars. And I think that restaurant was named
3 stars with...
in Long Island, like Newsday gave us 3 stars, which was pretty exciting because it was a very rare 3 stars. And the restaurant was named one of the top 5 restaurants to try that same year. Also, Tom Colicchio's restaurant, Small Batch, was in that category. So it was nice to be in a category with Tom Colicchio.
Tom's a legend, obviously.
You know, so I think it's about everywhere I go, trying to be the best I can and, you know, flex my culinary muscles and do what I do best. And, you know, I love working in different places because I love meeting people and making those connections. And I feel like a lot of times you work at one place and people follow you everywhere you go. People are like, where are you working? Where are you cooking? What are you doing? And everybody wants to be a part of something, you know?
Right. So what, like, it's, I mean, even when it's something so as simple as like an aged steak, which, you know, I mean, once you age it, like, I mean, you got to be a moron not to cook it right. I'm not saying there's not a bunch of morons out there and you guys should shape your shit.
There's a bunch of momos, you know?
There is a bunch of momos out there and you guys should shape up. But, I mean, at the same time, I don't think it's as simple as that because even the aging process and the sourcing process and, you know, how do we, you know, if we have 100 seats, how are we creating fresh rolled out pasta and the bechamel and everything? How are we aging all these steaks? You need a specific type of fridge. I mean, I know, you know, I got a couple hacks for this. I don't know. You probably already know it, but using a flour fridge for charcuterie and meat is actually a hack to buy an actual charcuterie fridge because it sucks the air up. But whatever. But like people don't think of it like that. There's like it's not that simple. There's all these things that go into the back end and this and that. As far as that goes, like, you know what I mean? Like, you know, just to explain to people like how difficult it can be. What are some of those things that like, you know, you've seen specifically? Like,
yeah, I think in every restaurant, I don't think most diners or consumers know how much work goes into that final product that's sitting in front of them. You know, whether, you know, we're outsourcing a meat. Maybe we're getting meat in from the Midwest, or maybe we're supporting farmers, or maybe our salmon's from Canada, or maybe, you know, we're getting these beautiful dandelion leaves from, you know, somewhere in California, or where we're outsourcing, or how many people are actually involved in the dish that's sitting in front of you. You know, I think a lot of people didn't realize how many people were affected to, you know, most recently with COVID-19 when restaurants had to close their doors, because there's such a long line that is affected with the restaurant business that a lot of people don't realize. You know, like when we have to close our doors or when we're forced to, we can't support, you know, you start from the beginning, the base. You know, we can't support the building. We can't support our workers. You know, we can't support our farmers. We can't support the fishermen. We can't support our purveyors. And then those purveyors can't support, you know, the people that they're involved with. Such like a long line. And how many, just think when all these restaurants were closed, how many crops were actually going to waste because we couldn't get them in our doors? You know, we couldn't support those people.
And pigs and,
you know,
chickens,
yes, pigs,
and all this stuff.
Chickens, eggs.
Well, what was going on with you in COVID-19? I know everybody's got a COVID-19 story. Can you tell us yours?
Yeah, so when everything shut down, I got involved with feeding COVID-19 testing sites. So we were a staff about 6 or 7, and a state actually opened up a building. I actually worked with my friend Justin. He owns Centencuch, which is a butcher shop out in Roslyn. He was like, yo, I got these testing sites. I was like, all right. So it was a team of 6 or 7 of us, and we would do breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And I think most people, when I start to go into this right now, won't completely understand it. So I'll try to paint the picture as much as I can.
Please.
So we would actually start our day at 3 o'clock in the morning. And breakfast, I think, had to be out the door at like 5:45. And we would do sometimes multiple sites. You know, there was testing sites everywhere. Well, you know, one that was in Aqueduct, which was in Queens. We would do Brooklyn. We had a place in the Bronx. So we had these drivers. And, you know, so each meal period, there had to be 2 options. So breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And then, you know, with a team of 6 to 7, and we're doing 4,600 plated meals a week. 4,600.
Jesus.
With a team of 6 to 7. And with COVID, they were very strict because everything had to be individually packaged. You know, let's say, for instance, you're doing a sandwich, so we have to buy bread in, slice bread open. You know, you're slicing fresh meats, or maybe you're doing a hot sandwich, a cold sandwich. You have a sauce, you know, a cheese, a meat, a this, a that. You have to cut the sandwich in half. You have to wrap it. And this is about, you probably have about, after breakfast is over, about 2 hours to get all these lunch meals out. Labeled, dated, you know. So we did this for, I would say, it went on for months, you know, breakfast, lunch, and dinner every single day. You know, so, and then when restaurants opened up, you know, a friend of mine, this guy I worked with, John, who's an old school guy, he's cooked for years. He, has a lot of friends who own restaurants, and every day we would get called to help these restaurants because nobody wanted to work. They couldn't find staff. So I think I've helped about 3 restaurants during COVID. Plus, on top of that, I still kept on doing the COVID sites, and I did a lot of private chef dinners for people outside their house because restaurants were closed. So some days I would start my day at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I would come home from working at a restaurant and would lay in bed and be like, oh my God, it's almost midnight and I have to wake up the next day at 3 o'clock in the morning. I had weeks where I've worked 100 hours, but I was so happy and blessed to have gotten a chance to keep my apron on and help people out and be able to still do what I love every day. And I've actually gave back a lot. I saw it as, I'm out working. I'm not on my day off going out to eat, which I usually do. So what if I took this money that I would normally go out to eat with and help people out? Like we saw this one company who laid their employees off and, they would go out and get food for their staff because their staff couldn't get unemployment. So I was like, what if we made meals for these people? So me and him would split $60 and make meals for these guys. We also helped my friend Deb Stone, who started a charity called Pop Earth, which is for autism and disabilities. So we helped her feed group homes on Long Island that house young adults with autism who were on complete lockdown this whole time. And we would show up with a simple thing like chicken parmesan and pasta. And, they would just be so happy to see us. I've also helped a restaurant called Salted on the Harbor in Northport. And I noticed that most of these shops and restaurants were owned by women. So throughout the month of March, I was just like, let's celebrate women. And we did something called Wonder Women on Main. So throughout the month, we raised money for breast cancer. I think we raised close to $3,000 for breast cancer. And I hosted a dinner. And I got a couple of these women-owned restaurants to do a course. We sold out in a day. We added another date, which also sold out. And I think we were able to give them back around $1,500 or something like that, or $2,500 back, just for I think it was $2,500. I think
Sure,
$2,500 back to kind of which helps restaurants out a lot, especially during COVID, but it's something I did in a community and everybody came out in support. And I think it was something that, people could have done and set up on their own. And a few weeks ago, I actually did another Wonder Women dinner and I was able to give money back to the Restaurant Relief Fund. And last week, I actually spoke to Congress in regards of, which ways we could help restaurants out during these times, even though you have to call a loss. But I think with restaurants going open to full capacity, there's still ways we could help them, and we need to continue to help and support them as well.
What did you tell Congress as far as that? If you were, the president of the United States or in a position of power, what would you do? What would be your solution? You're obviously on the inside, you see what people are going through.
Yeah, I think, a lot. I think we were up to level 8 of Jumanji as far as restaurants go, because I think especially in New York City, you're like, okay, restaurants are open. Now they're closed. Open, they're closed. Open, they're closed. And you can't do that because a lot of people don't realize how much it actually costs to start up a restaurant, right? Right now, your restaurant, okay, we're closed. We get it. COVID, not a problem. Some restaurants were able to do takeout and delivery, but you have places like 11 Madison Park is not doing takeout and delivery.
Sure.
Restaurant Danielle, not doing takeout and delivery. Yes, I think restaurant owners were able to adapt and overcome during this time, and basically anything
but
can
a
go.
lot of bars and restaurants weren't.
Yeah, absolutely. And
who wants to order fine dining for $64 a plate because that's what the place was built for and set up for, and it's just not conducive to a delivery world.
And I think a loss is a loss, but it takes a lot to bring all this food and product in, and then you're going to be told a week or two later you got to close your doors again. And I think restaurant owners were able to maybe donate the food for people in need and give back, but oh
God.
Oh, sorry. Restaurants were able to donate and give back, but it takes a lot to reopen a restaurant, bring products in your door. And also, especially with the unemployment right now is a big thing, because they're getting a incentive to basically stay home and nobody wants to work. And you're competing with these numbers that you can't actually do. You know, like these numbers for line cooks or people to work in the back of the house are numbers that we've never seen before, we've never paid before, but we're competing with unemployment and willing to pay that because we're so desperate and we need to, you know, we need to start opening up full time. We need to make money. We need to do this. So that's what we're competing with right now. So they were like, do you think after we take away the extra money on unemployment, will people start applying? Absolutely. You know, people also, I think you lose the stamina. You know, we work long hours and I don't think it takes a while to kind of build that up. I could work 20 hours and I'd be like, I worked 1 hour, you know?
Right.
That's just how I am. And I'm
just
built
how
for that.
you're built.
You know, and it takes a while to build up that stamina. So, you know, it's been a very hard time for everybody. It's been a very hard time for the restaurant industry. You know, I remember watching the TV after I was up at 3 o'clock in the morning. They're like, order takeout and delivery. I'm like, you know, there's people working to do that for you. You know, how about we talk about these people who I feel like they were on the front line, you know, takeout and delivery workers and restaurants that had their doors open. You know, it was a lot. You know I felt like a frontline worker, you know, working.
I mean, you fucking were. 100% facts. I mean, my view on the whole thing is like, I mean, I think shit's been changing. I think it has been for a long time. You know, I've been an owner for a long time, but I mean, I remember, you know, working my fucking ass off when it was a cash business and when I was getting paid between $8 and $10 an hour. And I would work, you know, 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. And it would be like, yo, maybe I'd bring home like 100, 150 a day. Meanwhile, guys that were working half a shifts on the front of house, they were making 400.
Yeah.
And they had no idea what the menu was most of the time. They were aspiring actors or whatever the fuck it was. It wasn't.
When somebody tells you on the streets of New York that they're actress, I'm like, what restaurant you work at?
Yeah, exactly. I think, and it's hard, but I think there needs, and I've seen this business evolve more than a few times. I know Daniel, I'm going to say his name wrong,
Daniel Balud, yes.
I remember a few years ago when he tried to do like, you know, all right, we're just going to get rid of tips and add 20% to the menu and split that between the BOH and the FOH.
There's a lot of people don't realize
and it didn't really work out that well, did it, right?
No, but also David Chang did that as well. But a lot of people bark or hate on servers. You know, like people say that's not a real career. You know, my aunt.
I don't bark or hate on servers, but like
people
I
don't
know
feel like it's a real job.
Well, it is a fucking real job, but there's different levels of servers, just like there's different levels of chefs. You know what I mean? There's the one that's
there's an order taker, and then there's a server.
There's a server, and that's their job, and they take that profession seriously, just like we take our profession seriously.
So, actually. We'll talk about my Aunt Diane for a second. My Aunt Diane. We're going to talk about Aunt Diane. But I worked at the Sagamore Resort, which is up in Lake George, for 6 seasons. And I basically got in there because my Aunt Diane worked there. She worked there for like 30 years as a server. And then she still waits tables today. But, you know, I learned from her on how to wait tables. And I've always known I wanted to cook, but I found it so important to learn the whole front of the house. And I loved waiting tables. I loved talking to people. And I was always myself at the tables, you know. And but I think it's so important to learn both so you have a higher respect. Because I knew when I was in the kitchen, I didn't want the servers to be like, you can't do my job. And I'm actually like, I could actually do your job, but I'm probably better than you. And I think you need to completely understand how the whole thing works. You know, I think when a server comes in the back and tells you that a guest hated a dish, they didn't just say I hated the dish. You know, I've dealt with really nasty customers at a table, and it's not just going in the back and be like, they didn't like it. It's like, well, they screamed at me and they told me that I'm this, that, the other thing. Like, you know, so it's a completely different ball game. But, you know, like I watch my Aunt Diane, and that's a real career. She'll make $600-700 a night.
Sure.
That's the only job you could possibly take home. $700 a night. I don't think there's many jobs where you do that.
There isn't. There absolutely
and
isn't.
And people want to say that's not a real job, but I'm like, some people work a week to make $600-700.
100%. Well, when I was coming up, most BOH guys did. And I don't think the solution is, I think the solution isn't as simple as one thing or another. I think with what Daniel and what David Chang, what those guys tried to do was, you know, the equal thing maybe isn't the answer, but maybe if, you know, if there's a situation, I don't know what the number is that makes sense, but maybe it's 20 or maybe it's 30 that goes to the back of house.
Like in Italy,
but
they don't do tips.
Well, I mean, you're not going to take tips away from America, bro. Americans are going to tip no matter what.
Yeah, I go get a Dunkin' Donuts, they want a tip. Everywhere you go, you want a tip. You know what's the one tip? Can we just discuss about this?
Yeah, let's go.
So one thing I don't understand. One thing I don't understand. So there's one place where I go and it's weird that they ask for a tip. Have you ever go to like one of those like fancy event spaces or fancy restaurant? There's a bathroom attendant.
Yeah.
Those momos want a tip for handing me one paper towel. Bitch, get out of here. I'm not leaving a tip.
You know, I don't.
First of all, if I just washed my hands, I have to reach into my dirty pocket to give you a dollar. Yeah, now you handed me
a towel. I was going to get the towel anyway. Now you're controlling the fucking towels over here?
Yeah, the towel place.
Why are you controlling my towels? I wish I could control my own towels.
And then they have a tip cup out, too, in the bathroom. And also, like, sometimes, like...
Well, it's usually at fancy restaurants. I took my kid.
Those.
Yo, listen to me. Yo, this was fucking crazy. I couldn't believe fucking seeing this and experiencing it. I took my kid to the boardwalk in Point Pleasant in New Jersey on on April 2nd of this year. This fucking year. All right. I went into, there was a place that had pizza. I was fucking starving to death. So I ate some shitty pizza. And I had to take a piss. So it's like, order the pizza, go take a piss. And there's a fucking guy holding the towels. He didn't have cologne or any of the normal shit that like these like Momo fucking clubs and restaurants have.
Yeah.
And it's just like, I need to give you $1 to get the towel. Like, what am I being extorted over here? Like, what the fuck's going on?
Like, and also they just sit there and just hand you a towel. I feel like saying, how much do you get paid an hour?
Yeah. No, I have no idea. I'm not knocking you if you have this thing, but we live in an age.
Everybody wants a tip.
We live in an age of we have Dyson fucking, like the hand dryers. We don't need the towels anymore. If there's a guy with the cologne, that sucks too. But like, if you want to make an argument for it, I'm not paying unless I grab the cologne or the deodorant or like what else are they offering?
Also,
like the
why
gum.
Do I have to give
the
them
gum.
A tip?
I'll give you $2 for the gum if I need you. But if you're holding the towels hostage and I don't need the gum and I don't need the fucking cologne, I'm drying
out my shirt right in front of them if they're in that case.
You're right. You're
100%
right.
Paper that I just use myself. I'll go get the toilet paper.
Yeah, I'll do the toilet paper too. I don't even need to fucking dry my hands. Like I'll walk out wet. I'll do the little shaky shake.
Yeah, that's right.
You know what I mean?
Or we'll show them, especially now, if we'll be like, okay, we'll just won't wash our hands then. Show them.
No, 100%. But all you bathroom attendants out there, like if you're not giving me gum, charge me $3 for the gum. No problem. I'll throw you a tip. But if you're not fucking that, I don't want to fucking see you. Don't hold my towels hostage. It's not fair. It's not right. It's a dead fucking thing. But for all the fucking chefs out there, I mean, what does it cost to live in New York today? You can live off of $50 an hour? I don't fucking think so.
I think there was a restaurant in Manhattan. It's $22 to $27 an hour for a line cook.
That's
crazy, though.
So here, it is crazy. But at the same time, people, if that's what it takes to live, and like, I mean, I might be wrong about this, but the way I'm looking at it, and I'm a capitalist fucking pig. Okay, I'm out there to fucking I'm out there to do the right thing, but I'm also out there to fucking make money. Because if I'm not making money, what the fuck am I busting my ass fucking 80 hours a week or plus for? So, but I think it's not as simple as like, I think there's a situation where, do I want a situation where people can make a living and grow and this and that, because that's definitely the world that existed when I was coming up in this thing. And it's more of the world that exists. I mean, if you go back to 1984, pizza makers that were making $14 an hour in Bensonhurst, and you look at what housing prices cost, you had to be a real fuck up not to be able to fucking buy a house by the time you were like fucking 26 years old. Like, you had to have a fucking major gambling, drug addiction, whatever. And you got, even if you make like 100,000 today, you got no shot. Like where we're at right now, where we're sitting, this is considered commercial property. This house sells between $1 million and 1.6. Let's say it's $1 million, right? Because it's commercial property, the minimum you can put down is 30%, which means you need $300,000 liquid minimum. And somebody might outbid you in that case. Like, let's say it's 30% is a minimum. The market could be everybody's coming out with 60%. So if you're making $60,000 a year, right? And what things cost, you got no shot. 30 years if you never go to a bar, if you never eat at a restaurant, if you never go on Amazon and buy a fucking book you want, and blah, 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 then 30 years.
You'll be living your best life in that house.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
it'd be like that Alanis Morissette song, Ironic. Remember?
I mean,
you buy the house of your dreams, you die the next day,
I mean, like the way I think about it is I go down the block, right? And I'm saying the fucking name wrong, but there's a really, really good, amazing bread bakery. They had a video on either French guy, Il Permerie. It's across the street from the White Castle on Eder, over by Myrtle Wyckoff stop. And, the guy was a banker in France. He wanted to be a bread maker. Selling fucking loaves of bread for $10, $12, a piece. Baguettes are $6, bro. You know what I'm saying? Like, now, if you come to the fucking, like, nuanced realization that, okay, with rising labor costs and blah, 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 we have to add streams of revenue. And you add a bread program like that to your thing, and you put in the fucking work because that's your job. You know what I mean? Yeah. The world fucking changes. It's your job. Like, if I'm the entrepreneur, it's my job to add the revenue to whatever. Just like Keith McNally did with Polino, just like this guy was doing. And you add that to your pizza program in your small print location, right? Then you survive. And not only you survive, you thrive. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, the days of, right or wrong, you tell me, the days of the place in New York City that opens from 5 to 10, that's fine dining, or, I mean, how often do you see that?
Yeah, you're right.
Even before Corona, like, people evolved.
I think you also change with the times, and I think if you have, like, a business, like, you're like, we just do this. As years go on, you're going to see less and less business, or not. I could be wrong. But I think you have to change with the times and see what's happening, what's going on, what's this, what's that. Whether you're remodeling, getting a different oven, maybe bringing in a beverage program because that's what's hot. Right. Or, maybe you're, inviting for the first time in your life. Maybe we're getting influencers to help us out. Maybe we're doing a social media page. That's the thing. Seeing what's out there. And sometimes you almost have to be the smartest one in the room.
You always have to be the smart. If you're the entrepreneur,
if you're the owner,
you have to be the smartest person in the room. And there's no fucking excuses. Nobody gives a fuck. Like anyone out there who thinks like, labor prices are this right now. All the restaurants are going to go out of business. Okay, let's say all the restaurants go out of business. Anyone who thinks that new ones are going to spring up in their place just as fast as the old one goes out and create solutions and thrive, I think are fucking lost their fucking minds. Yeah. Like, you're never going to live in a world anywhere.
Everybody's always replaceable. I remember somebody once told me, I think we've all heard the saying before, is the squeaky wheel gets the oil. But sometimes that wheel needs to be replaced.
I like that. Well, tell me that whole fucking saying. I want to hear this whole fucking saying.
The squeaky wheel gets the oil, but sometimes the wheel needs to be replaced.
That's the whole thing.
That's the whole thing.
I like that.
Yeah, I think we've all, like, I'm always like, why does this person get this? Why do that person always get that? And they're always like, well, the squeaky wheel gets the oil. But nobody ever realized that sometimes, you put oil in a wheel, eventually you have to replace it, don't you?
Right. And it's kind of like, you know what? I never fucking heard that one before. That's pretty amazing. I mean,
The next time you have a person in the room that's, saying we should do this, that, the other thing, and everyone's giving them everything, that person could be replaced.
I don't even think like that, and I don't think that applies to like, the guy in business has to be replaced. But I think it's like in that analogy, if the person is just like, I could just put oil and oil and oil, like he's not the wheel. It's his choice whether to replace the wheel or not, almost.
Yeah, but I also think if you're the entrepreneur and you're the one that has to be the smartest one in the room,
it's your responsibility to replace the wheel.
Yes, it's your responsibility to replace the wheel. But if you're not constantly learning and figuring out how to ways to bring in business and change with the times, I think it'll be you that is the wheel, and you could be replaced with the person next to you.
100%. And I think I see that so much, where I see people that they have a thing, it's worked for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, whatever the fuck it is, and they think that the world owes them something, and it's like, hey, you've been fucking sitting on your ass. This is your fault.
Yeah.
Like, it's nobody else's fault. It's your fault. When things change, they change. Who gives, like, okay, you were saying like, yo, we're seeing insane labor prices, right? When you tell people that, who cares? Is it forward-looking people? Is it fucking people that are complaining? Is it people that are looking for solutions on it? Or is it, I'm like, I'm going to be honest, like I just said it. I'm a capitalist fucking pig. I want to make money. And being a capitalist pig, the different way that I look at it than I think some of my colleagues is, I'm like, if it is what it is, it doesn't matter how much I bitch. That's not going to help me.
Yeah.
That's not going to help me make more money. I'm going to only lose money by changing or by not looking at this shit. I have to look for fucking real time, real life solutions. And you were saying how good our people are at figuring out solutions. And I think one of the biggest things that nobody looks at, especially when they open a restaurant, is a human resource element. Like, I'm looking at new concepts now where I'm like, I'm not even opening a new concept unless I'm putting 60 to 120,000 gross on the fucking table per week through my liquor program, through my pizza program, through my delivery program, through my, I'm carving out like a retail bread thing, like the morph into this thing. And the reason I'm looking at it like that is because if I want to open 5 locations or 20 locations, if I can't make a $75,000 to $125,000 hire, that is the fucking engine that I can be competitive. If that guy walks away, I got another guy coming tomorrow. Mm-hmm. That is going to be the engine behind keeping my culture, keeping my recipes, keeping all these things in line. Who's going to do that?
Exactly.
You almost gotta build it into the business.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I don't see many people like looking at, they're like, oh, there's gonna be some guys. We're coming up with the next Shake Shack. We're coming up with the next Chipotle. I'm like, yeah, there's gonna be guys lined up for work. Bro, this new generation,
nobody wants to work.
They don't want to fucking work. But like, I almost fucking can't blame them. If you got no shot at owning a house, if you got no shot at raising a family with the money they're getting paid, what's the motivation? We come from like a different era. And you know what I mean?
It's like we have to work for everything that we want, and we work for that respect, and we work to almost earn that title.
But you're 31 years old. And meanwhile, like the guys, the immigrants from, Uncle Mike from Fortunatos, bro. He had a house fucking 5 years after he walked in. He could have had fucking 7 if he wanted. Like, I'm never going to not work because that's the way we were fucking brought up. But I almost feel like it's not fair to tell these kids, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you're fucking lazy, yada, yada, yada. If you, like, know you're working for nothing. I can imagine I might be the same way.
let's all agree that some of them are just lazy, and that's plain out.
They are. We can 100% agree that some of them is a result of like horrible fucking parenting and fucking like trophy fucking bullshit and blah, 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 blah.
Some people have this ability to go out and make money or not. Like the other day, I asked this girl to work. She goes, I can't work today. I have a lot of things to do. I go, give me an example. Like what? I have to clean my car out. I'm like, bitch. You either should show up to work for a few hours to make money, and you could clean your car literally any other day. Any other day. But this is like their train of thought.
Well, let me explain it like this. Maybe this is like a better way to put this. So, like, all right, there's a million hustles in 2021 that if you bust your ass and do A, B, and C, like, you can make real money.
Yeah.
But spending fucking 12 hours in a fucking kitchen is not one of those hustles.
I'm pretty sure, yes, I know.
Yeah. It's not one of those hustles that's going to buy you a house.
Or
like,
these people don't have any time on their hands, but they're doing TikTok videos, you know?
If they're doing that, they're fucking crazy and they're dumb. But there is hustles out there where, like, I mean, I've seen, like, some crazy shit. Like, bro, my buddy Austin, my buddy who lives upstairs, right? He collects basketballs, used scumbag basketballs. The more scumbag they are, the better. And he has an artist friend of his who buys them for $20 a pop because he does installations for the NBA and gets paid like untold amounts of money. You know what I mean? Like, if you're willing to think outside the box and willing to reach out and get on the streets and this and that, I mean, there's infinite opportunities out there to make real cash.
Untraditional ways to make money.
We don't live a traditional time.
Yeah.
You know, the world we grew up in and the world now is I mean, it's changing faster than anybody could keep up. And like, who would have heard of a thing like that? Like, wait. You're telling me if I go walk down the fucking freight train tracks all the way down to Brooklyn College and collect 20-year-old basketballs that you're giving me $20 a pop? This kid comes home with 50 basketballs average. That's $1,000 for a day. I mean, it's not like easy work. You know, you're on freight trains in the sun, but it's also like not anything that anyone I think would call like backbreaking or hard. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's right.
It's harder than sitting in an air conditioned room at a desk, but it's. I mean,
but also I think we live in a time of social media, and some people make jobs. They have jobs based off of Instagram.
A lot of people have jobs based off of Instagram. I mean, think about, you know, what is traditional advertising anyway? Like, okay, I'll give you a great like off-world example that I grew up with, but like nobody thinks about. So, in the pizza industry, right? You have two industry magazines. You have PMQ, Pizza Quarterly Monthly, and you have Pizza Today magazine. And Pizza Today, it was they're the big boys. They throw on Pizza Expo that, you know, me and you know, and all this stuff. Now, their entire business model up until very recently was, okay, your grande cheese, your peerless ovens, your General Mills, your Caputo flour, your Stanislaus tomatoes, like all these brands that only sell to the pizza industry, whether they're an oven company or tomato company or blah, blah, blah. Now, for those companies that don't sell in the grocery store or don't have products that like you could buy, or your mother could buy, or your sister could buy, only people within the industry could buy, it would be non-advantageous to invest their money into traditional advertising and marketing. Like, you wouldn't want to put a Stanislaus tomato that Alta Cucina or you know, or a peerless oven that isn't available or isn't in the, like, no one, your mother, you, no one's going to buy that outside the pizza industry, right? So, like, if you were to put that into, like, Men's Magazine or, you know, Lifetime or what's the one I'm thinking, whatever, or a New York Times ad, you know, only 0.0001% that have eyeballs on your ad would actually be interested in your ad. So their entire business is built off of the fact that like we ship our magazines to pizzeria owners, and we have over, whatever it is, like 40,000 pizzerias that are getting our magazines. So your ad dollars are spent on eyes that actually matter. We don't know what percentage. So now you have Instagram. Now nobody's reading the New York Times, right? It's going to change and it's going to get like whatever, but like, where are people's eyes?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
But also,
you do it. I do it.
Yeah, we all do it.
We all do it. So if it's like, if I can, and now I have this amazing thing where like I can actually figure out a way, I can figure out this vertical or whatever, where I can put on an ad set where everyone, only pizzeria or restaurant operators based on, different things that I put like specifically into the ad set, only they'll see it, right? What's the point of marketing? It's to put eyes on. And should I spend, think about an average TV show. An average TV show, like, primetime TV show, or like, all right, Pawn Stars. You've seen Pawn Stars, right? Let's say Pawn Stars and American Pickers and all those other shows, they have an average viewership and Nielsen rating of like 500,000 viewers. How many fucking Instagram people and fucking YouTube people that, they get millions and millions and millions? So if I'm a company, where's my fucking ad dollars better spent?
On social media.
100%. And like, is it worth, even if I get to give somebody with 20,000 followers $500, where I got to give, I got to imagine an ad costs like for Pawn Stars to put an ad on their thing. It's got to be in the millions.
On social media, if you have to pay somebody, but it's also a targeted audience that you're going for. Like if you have, a food blogger, they just go around and they take photos of pizza and pizzerias and, they're with this pizza, pizzaiola and this pizzaiola. I want that person if, I'm Nino. I want that person to advertise me. Because that people that follow that person are pizza, like...
that would be advantageous, but like, it's just like, there's a different, I'm going old school because I'm old, but like, there's obviously a different audience from, Pawn Stars to Adult Swim to like a Matlock rerun.
Yeah.
Right? So if you're like a Matlock rerun on TV Land or whatever, like really old people watch, like, you should probably be like placing ads for like, I don't know, whatever old people need, like some kind of weird insurance or like, if
Empire
you got like
plan or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Or a ladies'
like,
home journal.
Yeah. Or you want to like refinance. It's like, I always see those ads where it's like, consolidate your debt or consolidate your lawsuit and this and that. And those guys.
But also those commercials that you're talking about, they're on at a, like a particular time, like,
to target those exact people.
Yeah, like during, like, so my mom watches The Young and the Restless. You see all those old people commercials.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And they're doing that on purpose. So, like, if you're a company who sells ovens and you're like, oh, I'm going to just go on social media and find all the random people with 100,000 followers and pay them based on that, you're a dumb marketer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't know. I just think everything out there is a little bit more like non-binary than like how like it's
We're
perceived.
just trying to be with the times, man.
That's it. That's
all we got to say about that. Me and you are trying to be in with the times, and
we have to be. We got no fucking choice.
But also, what's funny is I bet you are the same way too. Like, people like, oh, you could buy a book online. I need the real book. I need to feel it. I need to flip the pages.
Do you see the fucking books I have? I got a fucking library out there because I'm like that.
That's how I am. I need the real thing. I need the real thing.
We can't make a decision. We can, but we have to live by that decision.
Yeah.
If I make a decision or you make a decision, like, I'm not going to be on Instagram, you have to live with the consequences that comes. And you know what I mean? Maybe you can build up like something organically that's so special that like, it doesn't matter if you have an Instagram because people are going to gravitate to it and this and that. But if it doesn't work out like that, you can't complain.
Yeah, we're just trying to be with the times and fit in and do the best we can.
We have to be. And if we do, like, you're obviously an amazing person. And if people like you do what you do and you put yourself out there, you're never going to know anything but success. You know what I'm saying? Sooner or later, because it's, I mean, you're beautiful. You do beautiful things. You have a beautiful way of thinking. You're a fucking unicorn when it comes to where you're from.
It's not the first time I've heard that I was a unicorn.
Well, I mean, it's true. I mean, I'm a fucking, when I came back to the Lower East Side, and like, I was like, oh, I'm coming back to the Lower East Side. I'm going to be hanging out with like Cousin Joe and all the boys are going to be around. And I walked into fucking
you're like
rich hipsters from fucking Ohio and Colorado.
And you're like,
and
who
it was
these
just like,
momos,
I'm walking in and I'm like, I'm a fucking unicorn in this bar. Like, find another guy from New York besides me. Everybody's from, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what a unicorn is. It's like this mythical creature that it's rare.
We love being the unicorn, It's like somebody has to carry on the traditions and be like us and, be elbows on the table.
I'm very, very happy about what I know and where I'm from and who the fuck I am.
And where we're going.
And yeah, but I also wish I had a couple more guys that had the same life experience around in the same place where I'm from. Once in a while. And maybe that's selfish of me. And maybe that's naive. I got you, okay. But you're moving away now.
No, but I'm coming back. I'm only going away to cook and travel and learn something new, but I'm going to bring my adventures back with me.
Well, tell me about that. What are you going to do?
Well, first I was like, let me go to Miami to lay on the beach for a bit. I've worked a lot, just like I've been on a vacation in like over 11 years, but I love cooking and traveling and learning something new. So like when I travel a bit in June, I don't know what my plan is to come back or
you don't
when.
even know where you're going right now.
So right now my plan is Miami's first and then gonna head down to Dallas and see wherever picks up. I like to do like a stage and, trail and learn something new and meet people and network. So that's basically what I'm going to do. But, I'm coming back to New York and figure out where I could go from there and where I fit in or if I should open up a restaurant or whatever I'm doing. I think that's the plan. But I love learning something new and I love diving in and talking to these people and hearing their stories. Whether I'm in Dallas, I'm doing a campfire cookout or whatever I'm doing. So that's why I want to just travel, cook, and learn something new and meet people. And I'll come back to, of course I'm gonna come back to New York. I still live here, but I'll figure out what I'll do from there.
No, but that's amazing. I think that's it's super important. It's like, it's kind of brave. You know what I mean?
And no matter how far you've come in your career and what you have accomplished, I think it's still important to let me still learn something new. It's never too, I love learning new things and I love talking to people and be like, oh, that's so cool. I've never thought to do that. Or maybe I'm learning a new technique or, that's what I'm all about. And it's a continuous education. That's what this career is. And I'll never say I know everything. And I love, bullshitting with people, as we like to say, and kind of hearing their stories and kind of just always seeing where I fit in this career, no matter how much I have done so far. It's still like, well, what else can I do? I love having a full plate. Always hungry, Nino. Always hungry.
No, I hear that. I think one of the hardest things that, and one of the most rare things that we've seen, the people we grow up with, one of the biggest things that think about the kids you went to middle school and high school with, and they can't get out of their, you know what I'm saying,
element.
Little bubble and their element. And by you taking this thing, you've obviously done it before this by going out there. For everybody out there, going out to Union Squares, get it out of your fucking element, all right? You fucking momos that don't understand this shit. But it's so fucking important. You know what I'm saying? You're from here. You do what you do. You're always going to have your fucking roots here. You're always going to have your family. You're always going to have your heart here. But you got to, you know what I'm saying? You got to spread your wings and go out.
Right now, I might go away for a couple of weeks and come back and see where I go from there. I've worked a lot during this COVID, and I think I've learned how physically hard I could push myself physically and mentally, I should say. Working those hours, sometimes doing 3 jobs in one day, But I think it's time to just learn something new and meet and get out of this New York bubble for a bit. I could be gone for a couple weeks, who knows? But I'll come back and figure out.
You'll be gone for a couple of years. You gotta fucking just go. You know what I mean? You gotta just like see what's good. No, I fucking know for a fact you're coming back. Yo, just to jump off on a different thing, like, I mean, because we haven't touched on this, and this is a pizza podcast, but I know you from, you know, I think I don't even remember, but I think you reached out to me. You were like, yo, I want to come to your place to make pizza. But you were into pizza for a while. You did Urbani stuff. I've seen you all over online making pizza. You can flip a pie. You're an accomplished pizza maker. You definitely deserve to be on the Women on Pizza crew. Yeah. But how'd that all start for you? Like, what's kind of your inspiration behind that?
You know, being in Italy, you know, we learned how to make pizza. We had this wood-fired oven. I just, like I said before, I love it's very therapeutic, like doughs and flipping it and, you know, learning the science behind it. And when I came back from Italy, I wanted to continue making pizzas, and I worked, you know, with Carmine. I would show up at like 9 o'clock in the morning, and something I would see Carmine do is toss a pizza. And I'm a determined, you know, lady, you know, I was just like, I want to flip a pizza. So of course I had a few failed attempts, but then of course now I could just do it without I can't do things like you, but I could toss it.
Yeah, a little basketball hoop on.
A little basketball, yeah. So that's how it kind of began. But then I just kind of, you know, it's like, I think you kind of just learn how to walk before you could run, you know, like, okay, I can make this already pre-made dough that, you know, I had at Carmine's, and like, here's the sauce, and let me, you know, figure out different ways to use sauce and different types of sauce and different toppings. I want to make my own dough, you know, like, let me figure out the yeast, dry yeast, you know, fresh yeast and flour. And then I would just get to a point, like when I would work with the Urbani, like I could just, you know, like make a basic dough, right? You know, like.
I think that's where I used to see you on social media a lot. Is that the Urbani?
Yeah, and then I would just be able to, you know, make my own doughs without even thinking about it. Like, of course, right now, if you can throw down a basic pizza dough recipe, I think we all have one in our back pockets. You know, it's not the one we maybe always use, but I'm like, okay, here's yeast, here's water, here's flour, and then like here I go teaching people how to make pizzas. Sure. Or we're hosting an event that I'm making pizza with dough I made, you know, a couple of hours ago or yesterday. So, but also it's just like, I just love the feel of, you know, the pizza, and no matter how many times you make it, the feels are still the same. It's kind of like watching Titanic. I still cry every time, you know, like it's like my first time watching it. Like that's how it is. Like, you know, you still have the same feels about something. Pizza's same feels every single time, no matter how many times you do it.
Wait till I start teaching you different styles. You're gonna get like different fucking feels to it. It's gonna get crazy.
It's like being in a relationship. You know, this one, that one, this one, that one. You know, some relationships you never see the person again, or you're like, okay, I guess I'll try that one more time.
I definitely get a different feeling when I make Roman style pizza in Metro than I do with like Neapolitan in New York, and like those are different too. Like it's
or
like,
even Detroit style yums.
The Detroit style, bro. It's like, you know,
that's
I'm at
a
the
new
GM factory. There's blue steel involved. There's caramelized cheese.
You're like you know, when you see something so exciting, I need people to hold me up. You know, you're like, hold me up, hold me up. You know, like me, I saw Celine Dion in concert. I was like, hold me up, grandma.
Oh,
you know, you just see some. You know, when you're so excited, you don't know how to control yourself.
I do.
Sometimes I just faint. You know? Just like, you know, I fall like backward. So excited.
Yo, you're sick. All right. I think it's been like 3 hours. We got to go get some drinks.
This is the best one night stand I've ever had.
What's that?
This is the best one night stand I've ever had.
What, like the...
and then I get to go home after this.
Yeah. I'm not going to add to that. I'm going to prevent myself. Yo, Allison... Yo, you are the fucking best. I am so thankful you came on.
So happy
I can't wait till you come back. Yo, when you come, the day that you fly back into New York, you are coming back on this thing.
Yeah, or
deep.
These people who are listening might be, listening. Maybe it'll just be me and you opening a joint together. Nino's little rolled pizza, and we'll be making lasagna in the corner. We're gonna listen to D. Martin.
I'm 100% down for that. We're
gonna be listening to D. Martin in the background. It's like old school shop. We're gonna do wood fired. We just set set up a plan. Everybody's really excited.
We're gonna be talking like when you're gone. Like we're gonna be on the phone. We're gonna be chit chatting. We're gonna be figuring that out.
That's
You know what I mean?
You know,
I'm
Nona
gonna
Style.
figure out whatever the fuck I gotta do to get you back to New York City, not for
That's
nothing,
right.
really and truly, all day long.
That's it. We could, we got it set up ready, man. That's it. I got no words.
We already got it. Yo, Allison,
Thanks,
you're the fucking
Nino.
best.
I love
Thank
hanging
you.
out with you anytime.
Yo, everybody comment, like, share if you want Allison back. I think she's the best. Let us know what you think, because I know you think that. And if you don't think that, shut the fuck up.
Yeah, a bunch of momos. Shut the lights off.
Yo,
Hit the lights.
100% facts. Yo, we are fucking out of here. We'll see you later. Bye-bye, momos. Bye-bye. Yo, you're the shit. What's our time?